Hallo? Perfekt.
Hello everybody. How are you doing? I should put the game on here. There we go.
Yeah, hello everyone from me as well.
Oh man, it took me forever to find him, to find a possibility to actually put the historical borders on this map. Not easy to find that geographical data.
Yeah.
But I have pretty much, I found a database with borders for basically the entire war, so you'll be able to keep that up to date.
Hungary is kind of looking weird.
Yeah, they got a little bit of a part of Romania there, yeah. Transylvania, basically, that is, I think that used to be Hungarian. And Hitler negotiated with both countries, and that treaty basically gave that little part to Hungary again. Yeah, so a lot of treaties happened. Basically, all these countries joined the Axis by now. A lot of stuff happening. There is a German military delegation in Romania, which explains that first scenario with the Romanian officers. And they're basically supposed to train Romanian forces. Technically, according to the Soviet-German treaty, the Soviets would have to have agreed to that, so there would have been a necessity for negotiations, but Germany didn't do that. And Bessarabia or Moldavia or all that kind of area that is today a single country, that's an area that was already annexed by the Soviets. I am Romanian and looking at that map, ugly. Yeah, well, Moldavia was also Romanian for a while. Today it's an independent country. I think it was also in an independent Soviet republic inside the USSR. So I'm actually going to switch back to case red for a second, because last time, Brock, you told me that you were a little bit lost on the map. You didn't know where the scenarios took place, right?
Yeah, but you explained that, so it was fine in the end.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put it on the map again, because I marked actually the scenario spots. Let me know when you see that. I'm not sure how much delay there is on the stream.
Yep, I see it.
So if I get rid of some of these front lines, you will actually see that the initial push is basically on the right side of that map, basically where we run into that counterattack, right? So Reims is right in the middle, that thing. And we basically come in from both sides. The left side is basically Panzer Corps Höppner, and the right side is Guderian, basically. So that right push is basically Guderian. So that's how that went. You can see the progression.
Yeah, but I assume historically there was no crazy counter-attack.
There were actually remnants of... Let me actually put the Allied Order of Battle up again. As you can see, there are the 7th DLM and the 3rd DCR over there. So there are remnants of 2 armored units from the French. I'm not sure they did much of a counterattack, but Guderian certainly ran into them. There's actually a nice report in Halder's diary, Halder's war diary, where he said on one day yeah, we tried to send some reinforcements to take care of that horrible resisting force that Guderian reported. but by the time we actually tried to help Guderian, he had already defeated them and moved on. So Guderian apparently was a person that quickly cried for help, even if it wasn't necessary. By the time the HQ actually got his cry for help, he had already resolved the situation. So. But he apparently ran into some little trouble here, yes.
Yeah, but that's kind of what happened in our case as well. It was a scary situation. If I could have, I would have cried for help. But then...
but then we both took care of it, yeah. Okay, next scenario is Dijon. That's pretty big area, actually. But if I again march the front lines ahead, you can see that there is actually that push here in the middle towards Dijon. So you can see that the original push is basically cover that area, as you can see. Reaching the Swiss border and the east there, that's Guderian. And Metz, we get rid of this.
Wow, that's really huge.
Yeah, it's a big area. It's basically the entire push into that area. And the marginal line, that is over here. Whoa, not that far zoomed out. That's not helpful. There we go. And there we can see that we're basically attacking into the entire Third Army and almost the entire army groups too of the French and completely encircle them. It's also, I think, the only Grand Campaign map where my current location is actually on the map. Where I currently live. So, can you see it already, Brock? How much delay is there?
Well, yeah, I'm now at the Maginot line, but
okay,
I'm
good.
not sure where your place is.
Well, I'm not gonna say that on stream, even though I probably pointed on it.
Okay.
Okay, let's make a small experiment. I'm going to count to 3 and then I'm switching to the Balkans map and you tell me once you see it. So 1, 2, 3. Just to see how much delay we have.
Well, nothing happening at the moment.
It might be a little bit.
But it doesn't matter too much. I will just react a little bit delayed to things.
Yeah, just wanted to know how much it is.
Well, now I'm zoomed out.
Wow, that was ages ago. Can you maybe refresh? I'm not sure that there should be that much delay. Guys in the chat also, do you see already the Balkans map again?
Yeah, a very zoomed out version.
Ah, okay. That is okay.
Okay.
All right. So where do I even begin? Let me put in my notes. So first of all, I put some stuff here in Africa because that actually happened before, or rather Albania, that happened even further before. So on 7th April of 1939, so actually before the Second World War, Italy moved into Albania because of, well, of several reasons. Mussolini kind of wanted to build his big empire again, also because Germany and Austria had moved against Czechoslovakia. Italy saw itself become a little bit the smaller partner because Germany was growing like crazy and Italy didn't gain anything. So they advanced into Albania and annexed that. there is a certain history behind that with relations in the First World War, where Austria and Italy had an interest in Austria-Hungary, and Italy had an interest in gaining control over Albania to keep the other allies, France and Britain, to gain any interest there. And it also goes back to the fact that the Roman Empire had colonies there even before they had the entirety of northern Italy and all that kind of stuff. So there was a certain interest there. This was the base, of course, of the Greek operations into Greece, which was the next try to expand. Obviously, that didn't go so well. So that happened from October 1940, basically all the way to the point where we intervene. And in between, there's also, of course, some stuff going on in Africa. So the Italians already invaded Egypt in September of 1940. They advanced basically almost to Sidi Barrani. Mirza Matruh was the next goal, but they didn't get there. Then in Operation Compass from 9th December to February 1941, the British counterattacked. We basically know that from Africa Corps, basically. And on 6th February to May this year of 1941, that's the first time when Rommel arrives and does the counterattack and besieges Tobruk. So that's basically where we are in Africa. The counterattack that preceded Rommel's intervention was actually called Operation Compass, and they stopped basically at the level that they are when you start Africa Corps because of two reasons. Basically, they ran out of supplies. That was one reason. But also they wanted to push away forces to push them into Greece for the Battle of Greece. Later, the British will actually be criticized for that plan because, well, they took forces into Greece that basically wouldn't be able to do much there because there wasn't enough infrastructure. The Greece couldn't supply them with enough airfields, so at best they would be able to hold a position there and not really do any offensive operations. And pulling the forces out actually stopped them from moving further into Libya and stopped them from the opportunity to take away Libya from Italy. Something that they only did very, very late. So people say if they hadn't pushed into Egypt, into Greece, and had kept the forces there, they could have either pushed further or at least would have been able to stop Rommel. So it delayed basically the entire North Africa operation and didn't achieve much in Greece. So that's one thing that is happening in parallel. Always a little, the context is a little important, what happens elsewhere. So why did we invade Greece in the first place? Well, Greece had actually joined Yugoslavia, not Greece. Why did we invade Yugoslavia? Yugoslavia had actually joined the pact with Germany and the other Balkan nations, but basically the next day after they had signed that, a coup happened and a new government was put into place, and they were completely against the pact. So Hitler actually wanted to keep the Balkans peaceful and keep them out of any political shenanigans. But this, of course, made it necessary to intervene just to keep the southern flank clear, because he obviously didn't want a Yugoslavia that is friendly to the Allies and can potentially open up a second front in his flank. So that's why we invade there in the first place. Let me actually put up the order of battle now. Regarding the order of battle of the Yugoslavian army, they had 33 divisions in a number of armies that I placed on the map. The problem was most of them were not fully mobilized when everything happened. Basically only 7 divisions out of the 33 divisions were completely mobilized. You can read the text on your own. Main idea is most of the army isn't properly mobilized, and most of them that are actually down here at the Bulgarian border and the Romanian border, not at a Hungarian border, and certainly not at the German one. So the Germans had a rather easy time, especially in the northwest. So who do we have here actually attacking? Two guys we have already seen, 2nd Army Commander von Weichs and 12th Army Commander, all the way down here, List. You should still know those guys from the French campaign. We also have the Panzer Group Kleist again. He's in command of several panzer divisions. He's actually under 12th Army, kinda, but basically independent again. They're still putting the panzer groups under army command. He's basically commanding a bunch of panzer corps. He's commanding the Panzer Corps Wiedersheim, Stumme down here, and he's also commanding the Panzer Corps under Reinhardt, which we also should still know, which is over here. This guy has actually no regular panzer divisions under him. He has the SS Division Reich and the Großdeutschland Motorized Infantry Regiment. And down here we have the 5th Panzer Division, the new 11th Panzer Division, 9th Panzer Division. Leibstandarte is down here. And the 2nd Panzer Division is kind of a independent force that is directly under the 12th Army Command. So you should be familiar with some of these people at least still. 9th Italian Army is attacking out of northern Albania. And there is another 2nd Italian Army that attacks basically out of northern Italy. 2nd Army has also a Panzer Corps over here with 8th and 14th Panzer Division attacking from Hungary. And then a bunch of corps, Army Corps, Mountain Corps, it's 2 infantry corps attacking basically into northern Yugoslavia. There's also a Hungarian 3rd Army which attacks here, but they attack a little bit later. So I'm gonna read you this about how this actually took place. First phase in combat is the Luftwaffe massive assault on Belgrade and airfields of the Royal Yugoslav Air Force on 6th April. And an initial thrust of the German, 40th Panzer Corps from Bulgaria towards Skopje. So let me put that in there. That is this thrust over here. This Army Corps, this Panzer Corps basically pushes in over the border, over the river, and goes on one side for Belgrade and the other for Sarajevo. So that is the 2nd push. There's also a massive push over here supported by the Italian forces from the other side for Ljubljana, and the infantry armies go for Zagreb. I think maybe one of these panzer divisions also goes for Zagreb. Sometimes I see an arrow go over here, and I don't know which of the forces are supposed to be that arrow. Might have been one of these panzer divisions. They've split up a lot, so they don't always stay in the corps formation actually during this operation. The reason for that is basically that the first phase, like 2 days or 4 days after the initial thrust, the entire Yugoslavian army basically is falling apart. Hungary and Italy basically join after the Yugoslavian army has already disintegrated mostly. Especially since the Yugoslavian army, even though they were not fully mobilized, even the forces that are mobilized are basically not generally organized very well. They're supposed to defend directly at the border. They don't have any defense in depth, and they also don't really have any reserve forces. So once the initial breakthrough is done, there's basically complete disintegration. So after the first 4 days, everything's basically falling apart. So you can see here the Hungarian push in here basically meets 0 resistance. The Italian push towards Ljubljana also basically meets no resistance. So after the initial breakthrough, the Germans are easily capable of pushing through here. As you see, Belgrade is actually attacked from 3 different directions. We have basically the SS Reich and Großdeutschland. This position is actually where we're coming from. So we are actually the Großdeutschland and an SS division. Not that I like playing an SS division in the game, but there you go. From the south, Kleist is arriving with its entire Panzer Corps, and the other Panzer Corps is arriving from the west. So they're basically taking this in pincer movement from 3 directions. I also read in the original order for the attack that this is one of the main goals. Break through, take the capital, and basically turn the political and military leadership on its head and take it out. Not sure how necessary that was. The army was already disintegrating before that got captured. At the same time, 40th Panzer Division, Panzer Corps is actually going for Skopje and then turning to the south, trying to go around the Metaxas line, obviously, which is over there. There's a second defensive line over here, but the Metaxas line, let me actually zoom a little bit in and activate the rivers. There you can see why that line is where it is. It is basically behind 2 rivers. The Struma Valley is actually where 2nd Panzer Division attacks. Goes for the Struma Valley and attacks here, and I think they also go for this river valley and attack all the way around. I think those are the 2 thrusts that we do in the scenario. We come from here over the mountains. I think that's 2nd Panzer Division, and we come from all the way over here and go for Thessaloniki. And the rest of the Rough Army, there's also another corps here and a mountain corps over here. They attack immediately against the Metaxas line. And the army commander General List later said that he admired the bravery and courage of the soldiers defending the Metaxas line. He refrained from taking the Greek soldiers prisoner and declared that the army was free to leave with their war flags on condition that they surrender their arms and supplies. He also ordered his soldiers and officers to salute the great soldiers. The line was poorly manned as most of the Greek army was fighting against the Italians on the Albanian front, which is over here. Immediately before the German invasion, the British and Greek actually tried a counterattack into Albania to take Albania away from the Italians and enable a flanking maneuver. But that didn't get all that far. This is basically the line that it was on 6th April when the Germans tried to go for their attack. And one of these panzer divisions that comes in here, I think I'm not sure which one it is. I think 5th Panzer Division is actually going in here as well. It's really sometimes a little bit conflicting in the sources which Panzer Division is going where, but I think there's 2 Panzer Divisions arriving down here. One is pushing down for Kozani, and the other one is actually linking up with the Italians to reconnect this line, basically. Oh, Carol, you made it this time. Great. So the Germans basically completely outflank the Greek Metaxas line. Not a big surprise there. Same thing happened with most of the major defensive lines in the war. Well, maybe there are some in Russia and the Siegfried line. Maybe that wasn't outflanked, but this one was basically just as outflanked as the Maginot line. As you could see, pushing into southern Yugoslavia and then going around, as you can follow these arrows, and as it said in the briefing for that scenario, basically going completely around that. There is actually even a second Battle of Thermopylae on this map, which happened around here. If you don't know the significance of that, look up the original Battle of Thermopylae. There's basically, I think, British, New Zealand and Australian forces trying to hold the line while to enable the British forces to evacuate. Those red line are the evacuation routes to Crete, where they're trying to hold, which they almost made, but the Germans took it away anyway. There's also Not sure, do you actually see all these pop-ups constantly complaining that I put something in the audio jack? That is really annoying. Oh man. Hope that stops. Anyway, there's also a little bit of information that I found, a quote by Keitel about Germans moving into Athens. The quarrel over the troops' victorious entry into Athens was a chapter on itself. Hitler wanted to do without a special parade to avoid injuring Greek national pride. Mussolini, alas, insisted on a glorious entry into the city for his Italian troops. The Führer yielded to the Italian demands, and together the German and Italian troops marched into Athens. The miserable spectacle laid on by our gallant ally must have produced some hollow laughter by the Greeks. So... you can see that some in the German High Command don't think very highly of Mussolini here, so... And the Germans, including Hitler, apparently respect the Greeks very well, very much. So Hitler didn't want to go in here to begin with, and apparently the Germans are not very happy with the Italian ideas for a new Italian empire. Which you can understand at this point in time, because they basically had to come to Italy's aid in two places, because both operations were a major blunder. Since they were actually planning to do their own operations in Russia, this is basically an unnecessary distraction. So you can see why High Command is a little bit annoyed with the Italians right now. So, do I have any other notes? Let me quickly go through that. Nope, I don't think so. So this is basically how this operation went. Let me try to clean this up a little bit. Let me get rid of the pictures of the people and the notes. And then we're actually going to go into the scenario so you have any idea where we actually are. So... Belgrade scenario is all the way over there. So as you can see, but mainly the what is that? 41st, yeah, 41st Panzer Corps under Reinhardt, pushing in here, basically facing the Yugoslav 6th Army. And there's parts of maybe the Hungarian 3rd Army. But everything that goes around here, yeah, there's another Panzer Corps actually coming in here. That is not really this Panzer Corps going around. But yeah, whatever you want to think about that. But basically going for a straight push here, and there should be support coming from two other directions, from completely different Panzer Corps actually. I have no information about the Romanians taking part in this operation, by the way, but they're not really forces that we have here. They're supposed to be, I don't know, what were they supposed to be? Officers that observe the battle, which makes sense in certain cases because the delegation to Romania was actually supposed to teach the Romanians military operations. So if they send officers to observe this, that would actually make sense. And I'm actually pretty sure they did observe it in some way, at least reading the reports, but they didn't take direct part in it. So then we go for the Metaxas line scenario. That is all the way down there. So you can see where from the arrows who that is. That is basically these two movements. Mostly 2nd Panzer Division that we're following here, and you can see what area this scenario roughly covers. We're basically 12th Army for the most part. Hi Goose. Oh yeah, don't worry about it. I basically finished the map about 1 minute before I started the stream, so I haven't eaten lunch either yet. Speaking of which, let me actually grab a snack here, otherwise I'm gonna fall off my chair during the stream. So, after that happened Operation, let me go down here, Mercury, or Operation Unternehmen Merkur, which was the German invasion of Crete, of course. There was a lot about that. That was a first-time thing. First of all, that was the first major airborne operation in history, basically. At least on that scale. It kind of was even on another scale. Basically, the first operation that was exclusively airborne. Other airborne operations had, of course, been done in the Netherlands and all that, but those were mostly smaller operations and meant to support stuff. This was basically completely to be done from the air. So the naval one that you did, Brock, is the unhistorical one. It was also the first time the Allies made significant use of intelligence from decrypted German messages from the Enigma machine, which they had now mostly deciphered, at least the army version. The Navy version was a lot more complicated, so that's why they decrypted that a little bit later. But they basically knew the German plan. So the reason why Hitler was later so shocked that the Fallschirmjägers didn't have the element of surprise anymore, that had nothing to do with it being the Fallschirmjägers, that had to do with the Allies getting the plans. Admiral Canaris, the head of the German Abwehr, so the German intelligence service, also said that there wouldn't actually be a strong British presence there, or much less of a presence there, that the Greeks wouldn't defend it at all, and that the Greek civilian population would basically welcome the Germans. It is not clear whether Canaris, who was later... He was kind of a double agent during the war. He gave the Allies certain information, and other times he actually worked for the Germans. So it is not really clear whether he just didn't have the right information here, or whether he wanted to actively sabotage this operation. So it's not 100% clear. But both sides basically had an intelligence thing here. This is the first operation where intelligence played a major role. And due to the significant casualties, Hitler never used paratroopers in major operations again. He used them only as normal ground forces, kind of as elite ground forces. Quite this opposite happened with the Allies. They were so impressed by this operation that they started to build major airborne troops up and planned airborne operations. So stuff like Market Garden, you could argue that would have never happened if the Germans hadn't done this. This basically showed to all the other nations that a major airborne operation was possible and that it could achieve victory, especially probably because the Germans won this despite all the advantages that the Allies had. The major turning point here seems to have been taking that airfield all the way in the west, which is basically the airfield all the way in the west that we hold when we start the scenario in airborne. Also in naval, right? There were some Fallschirmjägers for you, Brock, that already had it, right?
It's basically more or less the same. I don't see huge differences.
I think you had a couple more auxiliary forces.
Yeah, I had a lot. I had more auxiliary forces, but a few more enemies, I think. Especially the west was guarded a lot better in my case.
Yeah. The landings basically take place where
the east was guarded better.
Not sure about that. I had 2 tanks as well.
Yeah, but I had, I think, more infantry there and air defenses.
I had air defenses there too.
No, you didn't. They bought it later, but
okay.
Initially you didn't have.
Yeah. They might bought it later, that's possible. Anyway, the landings basically took place exactly where they were on the map. Not sure whether you had landings in every place, probably not, but if you watch my playthrough, everywhere where I land or where the auxiliary forces are already landed, in my case, basically where the Germans landed. They basically landed at that place all the way in the west, at Rithimno in the middle, and at Eraklon in the east. So those were the major landings. The turning point seems to have been when the Fallschirmjägers actually counterattacked after the initial major losses that they took, and took that airfield in the west. That allowed the Germans to fly in support troops and reinforcements, and that was basically the turning point. So let me put the scenario on the map so you can see that. So that's basically what that looked like. Yeah, and a little bit of trivia information. And the landings of Eraklon, or Heraklon, or however you pronounce that, I always see the Greek names here, which I can't even read. Among the paratroopers who landed on the first day was former world heavyweight champion boxer Max Schmeling, who held the rank of Gefreiter at the time. Schmeling survived the battle and the war. So there you got it. Even a celebrity took part in this. By the way, as always, I have these maps public, so let me post the links again in the chat. Post the case red one also. Please excuse that the case red one is missing the notes. I accidentally deleted those, but everything else is still there. So that airfield is basically next to the town where all the British evacuated to, and that airfield was actually held by New Zealand forces. I think there's also Australians there, I'm not sure. And you use the New Zealand flag everywhere. I think the scenario only has New Zealand units, I'm not 100% sure. But he ran a Coca-Cola plant after the war. Max Schmeling, really? Interesting. So yeah, that's all of the history that I have for you now, unless there's any questions, especially by you, Brock.
Well, I missed a huge portion.
When did you get back?
1 moment. 10 minutes ago.
No, I mean, what was I talking about when you came back? I don't know what I talked about 10 minutes ago.
You started to talk about the Metaxa line, but...
Ah, okay, so you missed the Yugoslavian part, basically.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. A little part of it maybe I didn't miss. But maybe you talked more about the Metaxa line, because this was very short. I didn't get a lot of info here.
Yeah, basically... talked about the reason why we attacked Yugoslavia in the first place.
Yeah, but I can watch later, so you don't have to...
Yeah, it's basically two armies attacking, one from the north, one from the east. Two armies that we're familiar with. The 2nd Army under Wykes and 12th Army under... get over here, under List. There's also Panzer Group Kleist that attacks from two directions, basically into Yugoslavia and Belgrade. Our push into Belgrade is Reinhardt's Corps with SS Reich and Großdeutschland Regiment, which are part technically under command of the Panzer Group Kleist. So Kleist is basically everywhere. We'll see him again in Russia. Guderian is preparing his own Panzer Group. He's not taking part in this, from what I know.
What I'm interested in, I don't... Please stop me if you already talked about that. The defenses when attacking Belgrade, that looked very well organized in the game. And I was a little bit surprised about the number of troops and the quality of the troops. A lot of Soviet stuff, actually. Has that any historical base, or is this just in the game?
As I said, the Yugoslavian army was mainly not very mobilized when the war started. They had 33 divisions roughly, and only 6 or so of those were fully mobilized. Actually 7, it says here, 7. And most of those were at the Romanian-Bulgarian border. So everything that attacks basically from Austria or Hungary, it doesn't run into much of a resistance. Belgrade, I would expect, is one of the better defended area that is along the Romanian border. So the Bulgarian and Romanian borders should be a little bit better defended than the rest. I'm expecting that their capital was probably one of the areas that was quickest to mobilize and best defended. The problem was really apparently that the Yugoslavian army basically intended to defend right along the border and didn't have any defense in depth. So once you break through, you're basically through and everything falls apart. But considering how close Belgrade is to the border, I'm assuming that would be there would be a defensive line there, yes. Considering the equipment, the articles that I read basically said that they had equipment from all kinds of nations. That Messerschmitt that you encountered is historical. They had those. They had Russian tanks, they had German tanks, they had all kinds of crap. They had basically bought stuff from everywhere. It was mostly outdated crap, but some of it was good, like the Messerschmitts. They didn't have a lot of this stuff. They also had some old World War I crap, but it basically came from everywhere. So that they have Russian tanks and German airplanes, that is historical, yes.
Oh, cool to know, because, yeah, it was a little bit weird in-game, but it's okay.
Yeah, I'm assuming the game actually makes it the Battle of Belgrade and doesn't go into the rest of Yugoslavia because... yeah, that's probably one of the better defended areas, and all the other areas basically fell apart. So there wouldn't be much of a battle anywhere else. So I'm assuming that this was probably one of the bigger defended areas. Not that they held out long, but they held out for days, considering how close it is to the border. Now, when did they actually attack? On 8th April or on 6th April? No, they already attacked on 6th April, so they actually held out 6 days. So they took Belgrade on 12th of April, so they defended there for 6 days. Considering how close it is to the border, I'd say, yeah, they put up a little bit of resistance. I mean, crossing the Danube River probably isn't that easy either, but... seems to have been a little bit more. I mean, they held out long enough that these other Panzer Corps could come here all the way from Sofia and all the way from Hungary and arrive at Belgrade. So the initial attack probably got held off that long. And I'm assuming that Messerschmitt unit was probably stationed in Belgrade. If I had a Messerschmitt squadron, I'd probably put it in my capital. So those were probably the best fighters that they had. But yes, the initial attack also, the first phase on the first day was also a major Luftwaffe attack on Belgrade, so... not sure what they could do about that, but that initial attack was probably defended against by those Messerschmitts so that they show up there. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty historical. Of course, we don't know exactly how much of that stuff they had. They had a lot of old stuff in the rest of the army, but they had, that was definitely a part of the article, that they had stuff from all over the place. Russian stuff from the old Austro-Hungarian Empire, stuff from the Germans, some newer stuff from the Russians. They bought what they could get.
Yeah, and Karl Wolfab is talking about some wild stories. 8 men
captured by 8 men in 2 shrimp wagons from an SS unit. I didn't read up on exactly how the capitulation happened, but it's possible because an SS unit did attack here. It's the SS Division Reich. So it's probably, if there were SS guys, then they were from that division. So makes sense. SS units were there. So makes sense that it's possible that they did that. And they had a lot of extra equipment. I read that also. A lot of these corps and armies had a ton of extra equipment. They had, I'm not sure they had these swim wagons or something like that, but they had additional artillery, additional pioneers with special bridge equipment and all kinds of stuff. So these swim wagons might have been part of that. They had a lot of stuff, which makes sense if you plan to cross the Danube, you know. Pretty big river down here. So that's perfectly possible, but I didn't read in that detail. I read more about the Greek campaign a little bit more, but yeah, it's possible. As I said, once the initial breakthrough had happened, the Yugoslavian army basically disintegrated. So
yeah, it's hard to put that into the game. So I think they did a good enough job.
Yeah, I mean, we do the initial breakthrough. After that, we immediately move down to Greece. So showing the rest, Belgrade is probably the only area where it actually makes sense to show anything, because the entire attack from Austria into Yugoslavia basically met almost no resistance. So that probably doesn't make a lot of sense. The attack for Skopje might have been interesting, because that is part of the push that outflanked the Metaxas line. But we do a little bit more closer to the Metaxas line where we outflank them. So the outflanking forces, the forces that were completely going around the Metaxas line, that seems to have been 2nd Panzer Division. They went around and then attacked into Thessaloniki, which was the southwesternmost objective, and then basically went into the back of the Metaxas line. So basically what we both did, Brock, that seems to have been 2nd Panzer Division.
Yep.
The Metaxas line itself was actually attacked by 2 German corps, so those 2 western positions were actually not Bulgarian ones. Those should have been regular German corps. There was a mountain corps and a regular army corps there. One mountain division was actually the one breaking the Metaxas line.
Yeah, so the Metaxas line was never attacked from behind, just outflanked.
Yeah, it was attacked. It was frontally attacked, but it wasn't. I'm not sure how many forces actually tried to attack it from behind. I think they didn't care. They just outflanked it and moved on. It was basically the same with the Marginal line. That was attacked from the back, but most of the forces just went around it and kept going. Same seems to have happened here. 2 army corps were assigned with breaking through it. And they seem to have been able to do that without anybody attacking from the rear, which is explained here. The Metaxas line wasn't fully staffed because most of the Greek army was busy defending the Albanian front against the Italians. So the Bulgarian front didn't seem to be the major front, so they pulled forces out of the Metaxas line. And the Greek forces weren't very well equipped either, so...
Well, that's not represented in the game. They are crazy good equipped in the game.
Yeah. Regarding the Air Force, how much air resistance did we have in that scenario?
Quite a lot, but I'm talking about the infantry units. They're extremely strong.
Yeah, that's the problem. We shouldn't have that much air resistance either, because the British actually had much problem. The Greeks couldn't provide them with enough airfields, so not having enough air support was actually one of the reasons why it failed. The other reason was obviously the Greeks were not fully well equipped. They were also outflanked, and most of the Greek army was busy fighting the Italians in the Albanian front. So there were a bunch of reasons why the British presence here didn't actually achieve anything. I didn't read up on whether they actually had this many tanks. Somehow I doubt it. But because one of the things that is clearly said was that the Germans completely outnumbered them in every way, basically, especially in the air. So the Germans basically outclassed and outnumbered everybody here. It was again the British Expeditionary Force was again understaffed, under-equipped, had again not really good cooperation with its allies, with the Greek and the Yugoslavians. There was basically no real cooperation happening, no real communication happening. So basically exactly the same that happened in France with France and Belgium. The allies don't talk with each other, don't fully cooperate, and yeah, it's happened all the time. And the British Expeditionary Force isn't strong enough, so same thing all over again.
Yeah, so no more questions from my side.
All right.
I think no questions in the chat so far. It was, yeah, interesting nevertheless, but yeah, it's not, it's pretty straightforward, I think. So
yeah, Yugoslavia again, there's not really that much happening. The Germans basically break with a completely overwhelming force through the line, and then it's basically over. Greece was a little bit more interesting because the British put up some fights along several defensive lines. But again, those defensive lines were not really anything planned. Those were mainly defensive lines that were there to delay the Germans, so the British had time to evacuate. So it seems that the forces that were here basically never had a chance. Once the Germans started to invade here and were able to outflank the Metaxas line, it was just a matter of time. Crete was a different thing. The British almost were able to hold on to Crete, but Greece, not so much.
I do have a question. Maybe you have some about that, but what was up with the Italian forces? Why couldn't they do anything?
Well, the Italian forces had actually tried to invade Greece from the Albanian front, and immediately before the Germans had attacked. So the Germans attacked on 6th of April. So immediately after that started, that was still the Yugoslavian attack though. So before they were able to already move into Greece, the Allies tried to counterattack and outflank the German attack and fall into its flank. So from 7th April to 12th April, the Greek-British forces actually tried to attack into Albania, which the red arrows show here. So the Italians were basically busy defending against that, and that red dashed line there shows how much they got pushed back into Albania. That one blue arrow going off into that direction is actually a German Panzer division linking up with the Italians again, so that front can be stabilized. So the Italians are kind of busy.
Yeah, but why are they failing that hard in this area? Because the Greeks are not that superior, I would assume.
No, they're not superior in that area, but the British are also attacking in that area.
Yeah.
The British are in core Greece. We basically don't meet them because we are attacking Thessaloniki, so basically everything that happens after the Metaxas line scenario, then we would run into the British and drive them out of Greece. At the moment, the British are not giving major resistance in that area that we attacked, in quotes, because they kind of did resist with tons of tanks. I'm not sure those were there. If they had that many tanks, I'm assuming they would have thrown those against the Italians down in the Albanian front. So the main British forces are also busy fighting the Italians, and the Italians are busy defending against the British-Greek counterattack. So yeah, they're basically both busy elsewhere, and the Germans basically push right between that counterattack and the Metaxas line, in between, basically outflank both. So that's when the British and the Greek had to pull back, and after that they basically established just defensive lines for delaying action. Because once the Metaxas line is successfully outflanked, there's no way you can hold Greece, basically. But that was a Allied try to push into the German flank before the Germans arrive, but the Italians stopped them. So basically, the British Greek didn't have enough power to push all the way through Albania. They pushed the Italians back quite a bit, but not far enough. So that basically ran into a stalemate. It's basically the same thing that happened in Libya, basically. After the Italians invaded Egypt, the British pushed them back, but relatively quickly ran out of steam, so they had to stop. And once Rommel arrived with his superior forces, they got their asses handed to them, basically. So, and that's the problem here. They basically moved the forces that they had in Libya away to Greece, so they didn't have enough forces in either place, and they got pushed back by German forces in both places. So first in Africa, then in Greece.
Yeah, I think TIC has a very good documentation about Operation Compass online. I really enjoyed that. There's a lot of details about this operation. It's really interesting.
Yeah, one of the reasons why that basically had stopped and why that didn't continue was because they pulled away forces for Greece.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it was Churchill.
Yeah, sure. Churchill always wanted to go into the Balkans. Even later, he wanted to land there for the soft underbelly. He was also for landing in Italy, and only the Americans later pushed for a landing in Normandy. Churchill always wanted to go into the Balkans. He wanted to land in Greece later also and invade there again. But just a little trivia also, I'm pretty sure that's well known, but just mentioning it here again. Oh yeah, I need to show the post-battle borders. I have completely forgotten about that. But yeah, I'm not sure everybody knows it, but Yugoslavia was the only country in World War II that liberated itself purely from partisan wars. The partisans completely liberated Yugoslavia. No Allied forces involved. But maybe they supported them and dropped weapons or some stuff like that. But there were no Allied ground forces anywhere to be found there. They completely liberated their own country. So, as quickly as they fell apart in the invasion, as much as they actually fought the guerrilla war later on. So let me actually show you what that looked like. Let me get rid of all these lines. So let me also get rid of the rivers. I think that's clear enough, right? There we go. So that's what it looked like before the battle, or before the war. And this is what it looks like after the war. Obviously Greece is occupied, but I'm talking mainly about Yugoslavia. So ignore the names that Google Maps is still putting on there. As you can see, this entire thing where it now says Bosnia and Herzegovina, that's basically the independent state of Croatia, the puppet state that Germany built up. Serbia is completely occupied by the Germans. A whole bunch of stuff has been annexed by Hungary. Slovenia has basically split up between Italy and Germany. So the entire Maribor region has been annexed by Germany. Albania got a huge chunk of Serbia, which is actually the Kosovo region, which gives you an idea what that war was about. Albania annexed Kosovo under Italian rule, and Albanian population moved in there. So yes, it has implications all the way until now, all this stuff. Bulgaria annexed Macedonia basically, and Montenegro, I'm not sure what happened to that actually. I think that was under Italian rule but still independent or something like that. So a whole bunch of border changes. Let me actually put the other ones on and off so you can see what changed. So you can see Bulgaria annexed a huge chunk there. You can see that Hungary annexed a huge chunk of Serbia. You can see that Italy and Germany annexed a huge chunk in Slovenia. And there's a huge chunk along the border, along the coast actually, along the eastern Adriatic coast that is also annexed by Italy. Most that should be modern day Croatia, I think. I'm not sure how far down Croatia goes along the coast these days, but most of that is probably now Croatia. Is that somewhat visible from the way I show it here? What changed?
Kind of. It's a little bit confusing, but it's clear enough.
Yeah, it looks... You can look it up online. There's maps that put colors on there. I wanted to also put colors on there, but I didn't have the time. But I think you know what changed. So basically everybody involved annexed a huge part of Greece, of Yugoslavia, and
that definitely explains a lot of the chaotic conflicts going on there.
Yeah. So Macedonia has a bunch of mixed population. You can still to this day, if you ask people, oh, Macedonia, who does that belong to? You basically have, I don't know, Greeks and Bulgarians and a bunch of other people to this day fighting over who that actually belongs to the point that Macedonia must call itself former Yugoslavian Republic of Macedonia, otherwise the Greeks will get pissed, because they actually have an area in their borders still that is still called Macedonia, a region Macedonia. So yeah, these entire disputes on who does this area actually belong to, it has a history all the way back to this time. Well, obviously it goes back even further, but yeah.
History goes back even further,
Yeah, absolutely.
It has always been very chaotic around there.
Yeah, but you can see that Kosovo, it changed hands between Albania and Serbia already during this time. So you can see how that is a problem all the way till today. And I think Serbia still hasn't recognized Kosovo. Most states don't have, I think. So yeah, that was an issue all the way back here as well. Also, Hungary grows even bigger. They also got a huge chunk of Serbia. Novi Sad got annexed. They also got a little part of Slovenia. And even Germany got a little bit of part. So it's also, of course, Maribor had a bigger German population that was from Austrian-Hungarian times. That was part of Austria back then. So to this day, I think some people there speak German, so that was probably the legitimization that they used. There's German-speaking people there, so of course we're going to annex it. It was basically a legitimization for everything, starting with the Sudetenland. So, next thing will obviously be Russia. That'll be fun. But for now, I think we can then move on to whatever you have planned.
Yeah, my plan is to continue the discussion you started at the end of your own Crete video. Just talking about, yeah, your prestige situation and what might be the cause for it. I can't explain what's the cause for it, but I can maybe highlight some things that could be done better. Well, on the example of this Greek battle.
Yeah, let me actually load the game.
And I actually want you to be part of the discussion, Lieutenant Joker, so maybe it's better not just to assume it's someone else playing, and because otherwise there's always this urge to defend one's own actions, and that's kind of in the way of...
No, I'm fine. I know that I didn't play that perfectly. As I said, I'm probably going to switch days when I play, because quite frankly, guys, when I get home from work Fridays, I have since I go later to work, simply because I don't like getting up that early, and I have completely free choice when I start working, so I get to work late and I come home late. So when I start my stream, I'm usually at home for about at most half an hour, and I had time to change clothes and maybe cook something for myself, and then I have to stream. those are not exactly the best circumstances to be fully concentrated and take the time necessary for each turn. So I might actually switch that around to another day. But
yeah, definitely. And the goal of this is not to find the best way how to do this map. It's just, I don't think that makes any sense in our context, how we play the game. So I really just want to look at the decisions that are going on and the strategy that is going on and analyze it from, the point of view, the actual point of view at that moment. And take a look what we are seeing, and assuming once again the roles of the group commanders and the general that is in charge of the whole operation. So I hope we can see some interesting things going on there.
I hate that it doesn't get rid of the deployment hexes.
Yeah, but that's fine actually. Yeah, that's a little bit annoying.
Let me try
so we are now
something. Yeah, I can't do that. Should I just let it run the deployment phase? Maybe that'll help.
I would like to start after the deployment has happened.
Yeah,
so
that's
at the beginning of turn 1.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm gonna let it run the deployment phase, and hopefully when I switch then from turns to turns, the deployment hexes are gone. Griechenland. Yeah, obviously I'm not sure how I can tell that stupid map to not use the German names, but it links up to Google Maps, and Google Maps sees that I'm German, so it uses the German country names, which is annoying since it uses the German country names, but it writes all the cities in Greece in Greek. Which, I don't mind reading country stuff in their own language, but I can't read Greek letters, so that's annoying. Okay, I think I got rid of the hexes. So which turn did you want to go to?
First turn.
Okay.
Right at the start.
Yeah, that's pretty much where we are. I just moved the scout plane, nothing else.
Yeah, I have the delay again, so I will talk and wait until it's done. So my plan is to take a look at the 3 battle groups that are happening. So we have the eastern, or the western part, we will call that group 1, the center one group 2, and the eastern one we will call group 3. And the whole operation is led by General Joker, and let's say the others are Lieutenant Jokers that are commanding the battle groups. So now I'm seeing it, and I think the most important thing is group 3 right in the east. So if you switch
to the east,
that one please. Yeah, to the east.
So we're group 3.
Yeah, group 3. Yeah, now I have to wait again. Nope, it's actually pretty quick. Yeah, and I think that's the pinnacle or the focus point or the most important thing that's going on. And if you take a look at this group 3 and look what's deployed there, we can already see that there is a plan going on for this one. I have to wait because it switched back again.
Yeah, that was the earlier.
Yeah, now I'm there actually. You see, there are 2 heavy infantry units there. That's the Pioneers and the heavy infantry. And there's additional artillery there. And only from this deployment, I can already deduce that the task of this group will be to attack and seize the target. Because just for a purely defensive state or for holding out and delaying until support comes, the Pioneers are not suitable. So, because they have low initiative and are very expensive, so they are not a good choice for, a recon or partisan operation. So they only make sense if you actually plan to attack the city right away. And then you yourself noticed, well, if I run into tanks, this will be a problem. So We don't know if there will be tanks, but it's reasonable to assume there could be tanks. And if there are tanks, this group definitely can't take the target. The only option will be to pull back and delay. And yeah, as general Joker, there should immediately go off alarm clocks when looking at this situation, because these are two wildly different outcomes. Either this group will seize the target alone and we don't have to care about them anymore and can look at those three battles as separate battles. So each group doing their own stuff and seizing their targets. And yeah, no overall plan needed. But if this group can't take their targets, well, then they are the ones that are the most difficult to support. It will be very difficult to give air support to them, especially if there's an anti-aircraft cannon there, which isn't, but very well could be. And it takes a long time to get support to them. So in that situation, I think it's reasonable to plan for not being able to take the target. And I think at that moment, the whole plan should change if you take that into account, because then it changes from 3 separate battles to getting reinforcements as quickly as possible to this group. And if we take a look what's happening on the other side, where all the reinforcements are going in, you're playing very cautious and very slowly there, deploying at the furthest possible, safest location, and not going for a risky, more powerful breakthrough operation in order to get through to the other two groups. So I think that's immediately kind of a strategic problem happening here, where there's no coordination between those groups. And
not sure what you're talking about. See, a cautious approach. So you mean the landing ships?
Yeah, no, the whole thing. You deployed in Group 1, you deployed 2 artillery pieces, Pioneer, basically your strongest forces, and the landing ships are the reinforcement for all the units. But they are landing very cautiously on the furthest possible spot where they are the safest, on this small island, and that's basically the longest way towards Group 3.
Yeah,
So
the thing is, I didn't know what is in here, and landing on a coast that I have no intel on. I see what you mean with going in there with full attack, but doing that with the landing ships.
Yeah, the landing ships will be delayed 1 turn anyway. So the moment the landing ships are arriving, you can have information around all this whole area, and you could shift everything to the east, basically. So turn everything to a breakthrough operation pointed at the east, basically. Because the problem is, your Group 3 is in huge trouble, and it's a miracle they don't lose anything and in the end manage to take the target. But imagine if there are only 2 more infantry units there, you would get completely wiped out.
I still don't know I still don't know what you think I should have done different in the east. I didn't have more deployment hexes there.
Yeah, true, but the group couldn't have done anything different, but they are not well equipped for an attack if they encounter tanks, and they are not well equipped to just hold the position.
Yeah, but so what I could have done differently, I don't have anything to deploy there that can deal with tanks.
I know, but I'm getting to that point. So that's already a situation that's, I think, not sustainable. So
also, I grant you, when I started the scenario, I was going on the assumption there are no tanks on the island. I was very surprised by that, and that basically destroyed my entire plan. And no, I didn't think there would be. I was running on the intel, there are no tanks. I had no information about tanks, I had just information about Air Force.
Okay. If there are no tanks, it's alright, but if there are tanks, the whole plan falls apart.
Yeah, so it did fall apart. Because I didn't expect any tanks here.
Yeah, but... Yeah, okay. But let's assume you should take account that there could be tanks. And then I think you should change the plan into maybe deploying different units here. Cheaper units. Maybe your green infantry units that just go into the mountains and delay, or try to attack towards the coastal road to enable your enforcements to reach them quicker, or not deploy units there at all. That's also an option, because this group alone can't support itself. Rather, concentrate into pushing from west to east. I think that's the better solution to this problem, because this group 3, yeah, it's neither a complete attack force, nor is it a force that can delay or do stuff there. So, and it's very difficult to reinforce them.
Right. Oh, I actually didn't originally think I would have the ability to link up anything. I basically deployed all these forces with the objective they can do whatever they need to completely on their own.
I see, yeah, and that's the point. They are operating completely on their own, and I think that's a problem on this map. That inevitable leads to losses, or huge losses, because they can't do it alone, I think.
And they did.
Yeah, they did, but that's a miracle. This group fought very well, actually. But like I said, assume there's an anti-aircraft cannon and one more infantry unit there. They could very well be wiped out.
No, I don't think the infantry could have done a lot more. If I had known there were tanks and I wouldn't be able to attack right away, I would have probably deployed them in a different setup, so I could have gone for a better immediate protection by artillery. So, but the initial idea was here. There are no tanks, and I can immediately take out that southern target, form a strong position, and go with my very offensive capable units, the Fallschirmjäger, the heavy infantry, and the Pioneer immediately for the main objective. That there were tanks forced me to delay the action until I could bring ground support, air support here, which was possible. I could bomb them. That was no problem. The problem was that problem.
Was no anti-aircraft cannon, but if there was an anti-aircraft cannon,
I could still have bombed the northern tank. The southern tank was a Matilda. I think I could have dealt with the Matilda. It would, if I wasn't going to attack it. So if it wanted to attack me, it would have had to move out, and then it would have been in close terrain.
Yeah, sure, but then you are immediately on the defense there, and then the question arises: why deploy there at all?
I still don't know what you're suggesting here. What would you have done in this area? Not attack at all?
Nothing.
Yeah, that's not something I would ever do on this map. That is, to me, the gamey solution, because I have the objective to take this, and I have forces that need to drop here. That would be completely unhistorical, putting them somewhere else and then hoping I can push along the coast over here. That's not what happened. These three forces were independent, and they had to take their objectives independently.
Yeah, maybe if you look at that way, but still, I wouldn't have deployed an artillery there, and I wouldn't have deployed the Pioneers there, because...
I mean, technically, I would have deployed tanks.
Yeah, but
it's just. I mean, that wasn't a tactical decision. That was a role play decision. Why I didn't go for that. If I think, okay, I can, because there is a tactic that some people talked about, I think even during my stream, that they completely ignored these two locations, deployed everything in the west, and then made a giant push along the coast. Of course, you can do that. I probably would do that if I want to go for the safe solution. So that was not a gameplay decision. That was a complete historical accuracy decision.
And that's
But now I get what you mean, because the entire time I was thinking, like, then what would you deploy here? I don't have anything else. That you're saying you wouldn't deploy at all.
One moment. That's why I wanted not assume it's not you playing, because
no. That's not. I don't think the criticize. I just didn't get what you're trying to say. Because you constantly said I can't deploy this over here. Yeah, then what would you deploy? If you say you wouldn't deploy at all, that makes sense. Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't deploy at all, but the other solution I would consider is deploying cheaper units, like regular Wehrmacht infantry, maybe the heavy ones, and fight towards the coastal road, so I can help units getting quicker to this position.
So you mean having lighter units here and not attack towards the objective, but attack towards the west to link up?
Yeah, basically take the hilly area in the center.
So take the mountain pass, basically.
Secure the road, because this hilly area in the center is a huge roadblock for any units that will try to link up. So securing this area, I think, makes sense.
So the mountain pass, basically.
Yeah.
I think you could do that even with the one Fallschirmjäger that is pre-placed.
Maybe, but you don't know what's there, so...
Yeah, but that thing is going to be deployed there anyway. I don't know. Would you move if you play the airborne scenario? Would you move the pre-placed Fallschirmjägers? Because I don't like having these gliders in the air, not knowing where the Air Force is. I kind of wanted to drop them as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I would. If I give up on holding or doing an offensive with Group 3, I would move the glider from Group 3 towards Group 2 and drop it there.
Mm-hmm.
And send in a fighter. You had 4 fighters, so it's no problem to guard it. You could even use it as a bait. But the point is, if you look at the composition of your force, the only way this will be good if there are no tanks and your force is actually superior compared to the defending force.
Well, I pulled everything there that I could to make it superior. I would have liked to put it as if I had the slots. No, just saying, looking at it again, how I would do it again. I would basically do it like this again, because I didn't have the slots here to deploy a second artillery. If I had that, saying if I have to deploy here, not saying okay, don't deploy here at all. I'm saying if I want to deploy and I have to deploy here, then I would probably do it the same way again. I have the heaviest infantry that I got here. I can't deploy a second artillery because I don't have the slots, otherwise I would do that. But if I take, for example, the light infantry away and deploy a second artillery, then I don't think I have the ground forces necessary to shield the artillery, because the enemy locations here are, basically one in the north, one in the south, one in the east. So they're basically coming at me from 3 directions. So it's hard to shield from all sides.
That's the point. Since you don't have 1 or 2 more deployment slots there, it's impossible to build a proper offensive force. So don't build a proper offensive. So don't build an offensive force.
Well, a defensive force doesn't make sense if I play on the assumption that I can't get support here and I need to take this objective with what I have.
Yeah, but... Yeah, I give you that. But I think from a purely strategic point of view, you should aim to get reinforcements to this location as soon as possible and then attack.
True. I'm just saying for the chat here, in case I haven't made that point clear, I agree with what Brock is saying. I'm just running into the limitations that I put on my own gameplay, because what I don't want to do in these scenarios is completely change the plan that has been ordered to me. Like that would be the same as playing the low country scenario and putting all my panzers in the north, not pushing through the Ardennes. I'm going to push into Belgium. That is something that might even make sense under certain circumstances. It's just not what I've been ordered to do. So that is what
was it that way historically? That
yeah, all these three landing operations were basically independent. I mean, they didn't. I'm not sure they actually took their targets independently.
I don't think they can take.
But that was that's not the point. That's not the point whether they were able to do it. The point is that's what the plan was. So the initial deployment has to reflect, okay, we've been ordered to do this, so let's do this. I can't work on the assumption that the plan is already not going to work, so I'm making my own plan. I am role-playing this like I've been ordered, someone up in the high command has worked out this plan, and I'm supposed to make it work. I'm not in a position that I can come up my own work. Yes, I can control the units once they're on the ground, but I can't say, oh no, I'm not going to attack that right away. I'm not going to land there. That had been how this operation was done.
I'll give you that, but deploying cheaper units, they are not artillery, definitely would be an option, because I don't think historically they really dropped artillery there anyways.
They did have some air liftable artillery, probably not this size, but they had some stuff.
Yeah,
they had at least close support weapons. Yeah, I get what you mean. I'm just in this case, I'm thinking about how would I do what you're saying while not violating this roleplay aspect at the same time?
Yeah, deploy cheaper units, poke a little, and then withdraw and try to secure the coastal road.
But that's going with what I said. That's a deployment where you already assume that you're going to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not that's not what the Germans would have done.
I give you that. Let's stop the discussion here. That's all right.
In terms of tactical stuff, I completely agree with you. And by the way, I'm looking at the map. No, this area did actually achieve its objective completely on their own. So
you did as well, so it was at least historical.
The middle section got support from the west, so the middle and the western section linked up.
Okay.
Yeah, I grant you that would be the smarter way. The easiest way to do this is probably, and I agree with some people that have said they played it like this, completely to play the west, where you have that western airfield. That also gives you the advantage that you can concentrate your air power in one place and basically keep steamrolling everything, and your air power can walk with you along the coast. You have everything in one place, because I also ran into the problem that I had to split up my air power, and once I lost the central airfield, I almost lost the fighter.
That's the next part.
That is definitely a logistical problem on this map. Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's switch to group 2 in the center.
Yes, 1 second.
And again, I want to invite you just to analyze what you're seeing and not what you were thinking or trying to do.
I don't even know what I tried to do, but what I'm seeing is I'm in trouble.
Yeah, and
there's basically already...
I have to wait a little bit.
I'm basically looking at this. I have a very high assumption that I'm probably gonna lose that artillery.
Yeah, but that's fine. I don't think losing that artillery is any kind of mistake or something, because...
No, but it means I should probably not have deployed artillery here, because I'm not able to shield it.
Yeah, but assuming the way you wanted to play, I say it's completely all right.
No, I didn't. The way I wanted to play it, I didn't have to put artillery here. I could have put another artillery in the west, because even though I don't necessarily plan to link up in the west with the middle, it is still the biggest area. There's the most hexes in the west, so a third artillery wouldn't hurt. I could have put the third artillery in a ship and use it to establish another beachhead. Here, I think I could have held out here in the middle had I deployed, let's say, instead of the artillery, a heavy infantry.
For example, yeah. And I definitely wouldn't have deployed all my artillery that exposed, but that's all right. That's a judgment call you're making on the spot, and I'm not going to criticize that, because it's always easy to say in hindsight, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. But you're making a decision on the spot, and that's fine.
Still, if you look at the map, this deployment spot, this force that gets deployed here, is basically completely surrounded. You have an objective hex in the north, you have 2 cities to the east and the west, and along the road there is actually a potential counterattack coming in from the south as well. Considering you have only 4 deployment spots here, it's almost impossible to deploy an artillery here and be able to defend it from all sides. Yeah. So I would still say artillery deployment is
a good decision, but you made the decision, and I think it's fine. It's okay.
No, I think that was a mistake.
A mistake, but
yeah,
it's a risky decision, and it could have worked. Let's keep it that. But what I didn't like about that was not the artillery, but it felt like those guys didn't have clear orders. They just fought what they could see, but there was no focus on anything.
That's because
they were not focused on holding the airfield. They were not focused on taking objectives. So they were just there and fought whatever was there, basically.
Nah, so, I think what happened here to me was actually once I saw that I was already in trouble with that artillery, I was immediately trying to not take anything, but first consolidate my position. And then I kept attacking what was the most threatening at the time. So I was mostly fighting a defensive battle here. I wasn't even worried about keeping that airfield. I was just trying to stay alive here, and at the same time damaging the unit that was most harmful to me. That I couldn't immediately reach that artillery was also a little bit troublesome, that I couldn't see how to immediately take that artillery out. I'm not sure what I actually did here, but looking at it now, I'd say the first move would probably to try to take out that anti-aircraft gun.
Yeah, that was your move, but I wouldn't do that because it's actually protecting you, because it can't take the airfield. So I wouldn't take on the... But that's a tactical decision. I just want to talk about the strategy. I think what would have helped here is really assuming this role of general or commander and giving those guys an order, hold that airfield. And then immediately you have a different focus in your gameplay. Maybe you will take more losses, but it was really lucky you didn't lose a fighter there. So
Game On actually has a good point here. He said, well, problem here is that I landed the Fallschirmjägers immediately, which blocked my movement. Yeah, I can see that. I
looked at that too, but the problem is if you don't land them immediately, you can't land them anywhere, because this is not the plane where you can choose where your Fallschirmjägers want to land. You can just drop them down.
I'm not sure. Is it a glider? Yeah, do they always... Well, they will always drop if I'm on an airfield. Then I have a guaranteed drop on that field. Anywhere else, yeah. The problem is, Game On, let's assume I'm not dropping them. And I don't know. Was the airfield a deployment hex? No.
No, it wasn't, but you could have moved your
artillery on it
and then protected it.
Yeah, the problem...
But then you couldn't have landed the Fallschirmjägers, I think.
The problem is that only works if I'm assuming that the force in the city is on hold position, because they would still be able to reach the artillery then. If I move the infantry down to where the artillery is now and have the artillery on the airfield, then the infantry in the forest couldn't attack, but the other one still could. And I would still have the problem that there is an infantry coming in from the south. I think that's actually the one that sniped my artillery.
That's why I'm saying I don't think there's a better solution for this.
I do. Four infantry instead of 1 artillery, because the artillery didn't do anything anyway. It was constantly on the retreat. A heavy infantry could immediately have gone on the offensive here, take that one city out, or take the guys in the forest out, and then I would have been able to already attack the city, not the Victory X, the city in the east, from 3 sides, and that would have given me an immediately open flank to get in the back of the enemy artillery.
Yeah, maybe, but
There were not enough strong forces here. I think the only really dangerous unit here is the infantry in the forest, because that's the mobile one. The other ones are trying to hold the cities. I think if I have 4 infantry here, I can actually deal with this. But having an artillery here was not really helpful, and I think that is really a deployment mistake, because this position, looking at it, cannot be held like that. You can be attacked from 4 different directions. There's no way you can put an artillery in here that cannot be reached. Even if I put it on the airfield, it's completely useless, because it's going to get bombarded and bombarded and bombarded by the enemy artillery. So either it's useless or it gets constantly suppressed. So
sure, I give you that, but that's not the point I wanted to make. It's really, I think the main issue, let's not talk about the artillery. The main issue here was those units looked like they didn't have a focus.
Yeah, but that was the cause of that. Because I was trying to protect my artillery, I couldn't focus on something else. That's what I mean.
No, you could have. Just holding on the airfield definitely was possible.
Yeah, but then I basically abandoned my artillery. That's what I mean. If
no, you immediately went after this artillery piece and the anti-aircraft cannon, and you deliberately left open the airfield. So
No. That's not why I did that. It was all about the artillery. I attacked the enemy aircraft gun because it prevented me from bombing the artillery, and I needed to get rid of the artillery because it was threatening my artillery. That was all. Everything I did here was focused on my artillery. And you note, the second I lose the artillery, I go on the offensive with a focus. That you will notice, because that's exactly what happened. Everything I do here, the fighting left and right without a clear focus, was just because the artillery was here. That was not because I didn't have a plan. It was because I couldn't actually go ahead with my plan before I had my artillery in a safe position. That's what I mean. That's why that was a mistake, putting that artillery here. It hindered me more than it helped.
Yeah, I give you that, but let's assume the artillery is already down there, and that's the way the game is set up. Still, the focus should be not protect the artillery, but protect the airfield. So you talked before about following the orders, and
yeah, but I can't protect. But I can't protect. I did hold the airfield. I just moved temporarily out of it. I didn't
quite close.
I took it back that turn. Yes, I should have checked first before I let it go that turn, maybe. But the issue still here was, I can't just focus on keeping the airfield without thinking about my artillery. That is, yeah, sure, that is the major order. And maybe as a military commander, I would have said, fuck the artillery. Our main objective is holding this airfield so we can win this battle. Yes, but I'm playing a core where it's expensive to lose artillery.
But losing a fighter is even more expensive. That's why the order is.
I never did anything where I wasn't sure that I could take the airfield back next turn. That I didn't do. I did never abandon the airfield. I just tactically maneuvered around it. I'm sticking with what I said. Everything you said I did wrong. I did wrong because I had the artillery there. I couldn't focus on anything because I got threatened with my artillery from all sides, and I had to basically quickly react to, in some way, keep the current most dangerous threat away from my artillery. So I couldn't focus on anything else. I tried to keep my unit alive, and as soon as the unit was gone, that's when my units could actually start working.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. My point is simply, it often helps to keep in mind what the actual goal is, just not to get drawn into such situations and make bad decisions.
I have no idea how I should have avoided that situation after I have deployed the artillery. What am I supposed to do? I can't just let it die, not playing on Rommel with my prestige situation. That's the issue. Had would I have been in a position where it's bad if I lose it, but it's not a tragedy, then I would have played differently. But at all costs, I wanted to keep that alive. And I don't see, you say the deployment of the artillery is not the main problem. I say it is, because I have no idea how I could have played differently after I have deployed it.
No. The artillery definitely is a problem, but
I can't see how I'm supposed to focus on something else if I have deployed it. As soon as I deploy it, keeping the artillery alive is the most difficult thing and the most important thing here. Because if I lose it, I lose 50% of my firepower.
Well,
you say, I know that doesn't matter, you should have focused on this. I don't see how I could have. Because as soon as I focus in any direction, the other two directions go for my artillery.
Well, let's put it a little bit differently. It didn't look like it was a deliberate decision. If you make the decision the artillery at this point is more important, then it's fine. But if you get drawn into this just by, I have to defend here now because my artillery is threatened, and in the heat of the moment, disregard the airfield a little bit,
I didn't do that.
Then I think that's a problem.
I don't know if that I have to say was not the case. I always had an eye on whether I could get back the airfield. I never wanted to abandon the airfield. I was very aware that I would run into big trouble if I lose that airfield, because I knew on the east there's tanks. There's no way I can get the airfield there. So if at the same time I needed to be able to get air support in the east to keep those tanks from attacking me, I needed to continually damage them. Otherwise, my eastern force was going to be screwed. So I knew I needed this airfield. I was only ever going to abandon them for one turn.
It's fine.
No, I'm just saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. What you say, I should have focused on something. I don't see how.
That's why I wanted it not... That's the problem with when we are talking about
I'm not defending myself. I'm saying when I look at this situation, I have no idea how I'm not supposed to focus on the artillery. That is most of my firepower in this area. That is the most important thing, and it's currently surrounded from 3 sides. The only thing I can do right now that would make any sense is completely abandon this position and regroup and first take out one of these cities, so I have one side where I can't get attacked from. But that is not possible because I need to hold on to the airfield. So whatever I'm looking at, this is the basic situation here is I'm completely screwed. Looking at this from now, the perspective, not what I did, looking at this, if I want to go at it now, I basically see that this entire position can't be held. This is an impossible situation. This is tactically as horrible as it can get.
Again, we are not talking about this specific situation. It's about the general mindset you should have going into this. And it certainly looked like you got dragged away by the movement. It might not have been the way, and it doesn't matter. It's just in tough spots like this, it's very important to kind of assume the role of the general or the commander and give this battle group an order.
I know what you're trying to say, and I disagree that wasn't what I was doing. I had 2 objectives here. One from high command, hold on to this airfield. I did not lose sight of that. I knew very much that I could under no circumstances abandon this airfield. That's exactly why I ran into this problem. The tactical situation was keep your artillery alive. It's most of your firepower. The strategic situation was we need that airfield. Those 2 goals at this point in time were going completely opposite, because if I'm looking at from a purely tactical situation, I'm getting the fuck out of here. If I look from a pure strategic point of view, I'm abandoning the artillery. Combining that in gameplay was not really possible, because I can't abandon the airfield at the same time. I can't gameplay-wise simply abandon my artillery. The only thing that I could possibly think about that I could have tried, I don't know why I actually didn't try that, probably because I thought it was too risky, was pack up that artillery and pull it somewhere into the mountains to the west somewhere there and hope nobody sees me. Just get that artillery out of here because I can't defend it and it's just in the way. But I didn't do that, probably because I thought it was too risky. That's exactly my problem, that I didn't lose sight of the big picture. I knew I had to take the airfield. At the same time, I had the tactical problem of keeping the artillery alive, and both were exactly opposite to each other. That's why it looks so chaotic here, because I never knew which goal am I currently following, and I had to abandon one of them in one turn to be able to take care of the other problem, and then I abandoned the other one again to take care of the original problem. Like, I moved out of the airfield to be better able to protect the artillery, knowing in the next turn I have to do exactly the opposite, and in the next turn I have to abandon the artillery position to take back the airfield. So I'm just saying, some people tell me here, your point, Brocketer's point is, don't go into tunnel vision and don't lose focus on the big picture.
You did it. It's just an example where this can easily happen, and that's very important. And you played this part extremely quickly, and for example, I see several solutions here, and I personally would have to think about them much longer. For example, you could take the artillery, move it between the mountain and the airfield, fire the artillery at the 11th rank's infantry unit, because it's the most threatening thing to my artillery, move the infantry down, attack the infantry in the forest to push it back or damage it, move the 2nd infantry back to protect the artillery from the other side, and then you have a very packed situation that maybe is able to defend the airfield.
Yeah, but then well, I disagree from a tactical position, because if I do that, I basically do not. So you're saying you would attack the infantry down there and not attack either the anti-aircraft gun and the artillery. Yeah. If we do that, the problem is I'm seeing the tactical situation how I see it. I'm basically surrounded from 3 sides, possibly from 4 sides. I have 3 very strong British, Australian, whatever units here that are over strength. That means I have a Fallschirmjäger here, which is not very good at defense, and I have 2 light infantry here, which are also not necessarily able to easily hold out here. They're all guarded by the artillery. The problem is that artillery won't help me very much if they mass attack me and they move in the artillery to suppress mine. And if I do your move, that's exactly what is still possible for the enemy. That's why I went for the artillery. I saw if that artillery isn't weakened, it can completely suppress mine, and then overstrength infantry that is very dangerous can go into my non-guarded infantry. And if one of these 3 infantry gets damaged below 8, I can already not hold this position anymore.
Yeah, sure, but you could also do the same thing, not attack the infantry and attack the artillery instead. So there are multiple options here you could have done, and but I can't push back the infantry that you mentioned and at the same time attack the artillery, because the only infantry that can attack the infantry in the forest is the one that is right now south of the artillery. So that infantry has to pick one. The other ones can't reach it. The point is, it's a very complicated situation.
It's an impossible situation.
No, I don't think it's impossible.
I think it is completely impossible. I see no way how you can get anything coordinated going here with that artillery being there. I mean, sure, you can push that southern infantry out of there, if that's possible. I'm not even sure it is, because that depends on how entrenched it is and whether one shot is actually enough to reduce it. It seems that it is. So we can push that temporarily out of there. There is another infantry, however, coming in from the south, even if we assume that's not going to be the case. If I push that infantry back, I'm going to suppressed by the artillery. If I attack the artillery, I can't protect my artillery against that infantry. So no matter what I do, my artillery is already going to get massively hit. At the same time, I'm losing my protection through that artillery, which means all my infantry is open for attack. What I see in this tactical situation is First of all, deploying an artillery here is not helpful at all. It is actually distracting because it's a unit that can't do anything, and it takes away firepower because a unit that can't do anything takes away a deployment hex from a unit that actually would be able to do something. At the same time, deploying 2 light infantry in the middle of 3 towns is completely idiotic because these guys are in a massive disadvantaged position right from the start because they're completely surrounded. This is the one point on the map where I need heavy artillery that can actually defend. So when we're talking about how we look at this situation, and I'm not talking about tunnel vision or anything else yet, but I'm talking about how would I approach this situation going in again. This is not a deployment that makes any sense whatsoever for this situation. This is an impossible situation to be in, and I fully am convinced that the current deployment situation here is a position that cannot be held. That I was able to do anything with this at all is a miracle. You say the East was a miracle. This, to me, is the miracle. Losing the artillery and not losing these 2 infantry units is, to me, the miracle, that I actually managed to take this.
Yeah, I was not talking about this. Yeah, this is a miracle.
I don't think
managed to take all their targets.
I don't think this can be done with that artillery there.
But what I'm trying to say is that's not really the point. The point here is, in situations like that, yeah, of course, you shouldn't bring yourself in situations like that. But in situations like that, it's always a good idea to remember what actually are the main objectives here. Stop, think about it, and not immediately do something.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I mean. The objective here is absolutely clear. You have to hold the airfield. That's the only goal that these guys have, because that airfield is strategically the most important thing on the map right now.
It's actually managed it's also mentioned in the briefing, so it's really important. And
that's exactly what I mean.
I want to say here.
But exactly what I mean. I'm trying to say, what if you listen to exactly that? What would you do in this situation? And I'm saying the only thing you could possibly do here is remove that artillery out of the equation. It's actually who did say that? Richard Martin said it. He really is screwed here unless the artillery can be transported to a safe spot. That's exactly what I'm saying. The move I would try to make here, with the main objective in mind, looking at it, I see a situation where I can't really focus on what the orders from the high command are to hold this airfield, as long as I have to worry about protecting that artillery. Meaning, push that artillery somewhere in the hills and hope they don't get found. I think that might even be possible. I'm not sure how much movement they have. If I can get them to that first clear hex on the road southwest of the mountain, south of the airfield, halfway basically to that southern town, and that southern infantry hasn't moved out yet. If I can get it there on one turn, stay it hidden, leave it hidden there, and then I can move it all the way to the southern coast, completely out of vision, then this situation could be resolved. If this artillery stays where it is, thinking about the main objective can actually make you even more worried here, because then you have, as I mentioned, then you have 2 problems that cannot be solved at the same time. You have the main problem, I need to hold on to the airfield, and you have the other problem, I need to keep this artillery alive, and both are working completely opposite. That's why I'm saying the smart choice here, keeping the main objective in mind, would have been to get rid of this artillery. Fortunately, the enemy did that for me. But because I'm fully convinced, if they hadn't done that, if I hadn't lost this artillery, I might not have been able to do this, because I would have kept working on keeping that artillery alive, and I would never have been able to go on the actual offensive.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Why? You constantly tell me I have to keep the main objective alive, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. If in this situation you have to keep that in mind, then the only smart choice under those circumstances is to get this artillery out of here.
No, the smart choice is, in this situation, stop, think, and not immediately act. doesn't matter what happened or did happen, or you thought or not thought. That's not what I'm talking about. It's just, in this situation, it's very important to refocus, re-evaluate the orders, and I'm not saying you didn't do that. It's just an example of where this is very important.
I didn't do that. I didn't do that enough, because that's exactly what I'm saying. If I would have done that, I would have pulled the artillery out of there.
Yeah, that's true, but the other thing is, you immediately attacked the artillery and went for the AE gun.
Yes, and I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't trying to protect the artillery. That was the main reason I did that. If that hadn't been the case, I would have pulled my artillery back so I could have attacked one of these positions completely with a focused force, concentrate on one of these targets, probably either the left or the right one, because the northern one is kind of hard to attack. And then I would have done that. That's what I'm trying to say, to teach people what was the problem here. The problem was I didn't think about what the main objective was and how to best achieve it. The best way to achieve the main objective, which is clean up this area while at the same time always holding on to the airfield, would have been get this fucking artillery out of there. It is just in the way. Not only is it blocking a movement hex, but it's also not helping. That would have been that would have been exactly that. If you lean back and think about it, you come to the conclusion that you have to do something here that tactically doesn't make any sense at all. Getting rid of half your firepower. Strategically, however, that is exactly the right thing to do.
Yeah. And I think we can stop.
No, I think we're agreeing here. You just, I'm not going for the general point. I'm trying to apply your point to this specific situation, and I think you're right. I acted a little bit in panic mode here. I didn't lose sight of the main objective, but I didn't do that the optimal way. The only time where I actually started to work very coordinated here towards a clear target was once the artillery was gone. And I think if I had removed the artillery out of the equation, I would have been sooner able to do that. And if I had looked at the deployment situation earlier, considering what the actual strategic situation of this deployment zone is, I would have never deployed an artillery here, because it clearly is not useful here. That was a strategic mistake during the battle, and it was a strategic mistake already in the deployment.
Yeah, I'm not 100% convinced about that, because you didn't see all this stuff. And
no, but I see. No, I don't see the units, but I clearly see the hexes. I have 3 cities surrounding me and another one in the south where something is possibly able to arrive. That is not a situation in which an artillery makes sense. Not if I can only deploy 3 other units.
But if you apply this logic, you shouldn't have deployed the artillery in the east as well, because that's completely exposed too. And you could have dropped noticed that there are 3 infantry units behind your artillery.
Not that exposed, because in that sense I'm only have enemy positions to the east of me. That is a position that
if you move back to the screen, I, for example, wouldn't be surprised if there are a lot of units holding those mountain regions, because that's a logical region for me to block an enemy advance. So, there could be an cavalry unit behind there, for example, and there could be artillery in the back of this city. So there could be a lot of stuff there. There could be a lot of stuff. So once seeing the actual situation, your judgment obviously changes. But the point is,
yeah, we can argue about the eastern point. The difference with the eastern point is that I have 1 additional infantry there that I can deploy, so I have more ability to shield my units. True. Also, I have more area here to retreat to. I'm sure, yeah, in the mountains there could be something, but there's not going to be something everywhere over here. they're not going to put the entire unit, the entire map full of units. Here I have
obviously.
No, I'm just pointing out there is a clear difference between this and the other position. I'm agreeing with you. It is still problematic to deploy an artillery here, but it's not as problematic as in the other position.
Yeah, that's true. We completely agree there. But you could have deployed 4 units on the other side as well, obviously.
Yeah, and that would have been the better choice there, to deploy 4 infantry units, especially a heavier one.
No, you could have deployed 5 units.
So in the in the group 3, you mean? Yeah, I could.
No, in group 2.
5? Where was there another deployment hex?
Yeah, obviously.
Okay. Then why didn't I do that?
I don't know, but Game On is saying it, and a bunch of other people too. I didn't notice this either.
That confuses me now, because I put infantry in the ships. Why didn't I?
It doesn't matter.
Really?
It's just...
Let me go back. No, that is something I want to see now. Let me reload that, because then that is already a major mistake in itself. Because that's the most central position, and not deploying the maximum of force there is completely idiotic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, sure. Why the fuck did I not do that? Okay, that is a major mistake right there. I have no idea why I did that. I'm assuming I didn't have enough infantry, and then I bought the additional infantry, and then I forgot about this deployment hex and put them in ships instead. But yeah, wow. Thank you for pointing that out. That is the biggest mistake in this area right there. That would have been so much more important than anything we just talked about. Obviously, this is the central position, the most important airfield. Is that actually the airfield they talk about in the briefing? I thought that was the other one.
No, that's the one.
Okay, but
it in mine as well.
Yeah, but that's the major mistake.
That's the most important thing. That's the point, because that's just a mistake you make.
No, that's not just a mistake you make. That's a strategic of major importance. That's the most central location. That's the locations linking the other two. You have to deploy most of your forces there.
Yeah, of course, it's a grave mistake, but it's definitely just a mistake. That's nothing to learn from that other than pay more attention. But my point was,
but that's a pretty big thing to learn.
Yeah, sure. I will try to summarize it, and then let's move on to the first group. But what I was trying to say is, in these tough spots, just stop, rethink, and not go for an immediate reaction to something. And again, completely, that's a point that's not linked to this specific situation, but it's a general situation, because I think it highlights the situation you can find yourself in very well. Because this is a really tough spot. You probably made a mistake earlier. You're angry, why is this artillery here? And that's when you are going to make mistakes. Not saying Lieutenant Schucker did make a mistake, it's just that are the tough spots where you really have to stay focused.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying try to not get you in a situation like that, because trust me,
better not to get into those situations, but you will get into those situations, and then it's important to take one step back, refocus, keep in mind what are my general orders. Is it probably a good idea to abandon these orders now, or should I stick to them? Is the artillery more important than the airfield? That's a very tough decision, and
that's why I'm saying. That's why I'm saying. If you follow what Brock just said, then you have to make a very tough decision here. And when you guys say, yeah, you're fucked here until you get that artillery out of there, yeah, if you play normally and you're used to tactically thinking just about the spot you're currently looking at, then pulling that artillery out of there is not something you would ever think about, despite the fact that it's probably the best thing you could do. So Bruck is absolutely right. You have to keep in mind, what are you actually trying to achieve? And are the units that you have in this spot that you are right now actually helping you to achieve that? That's also what we said in earlier cooperation streams, that you need to look some turns ahead and already move the units that you're going to need where you're going to need them. Otherwise, you're not going to be fast enough, especially not at difficulty levels like Guderian. This is a similar situation. If you look at it and you think about, okay, what's my main objectives and what units that I have in this location are actually helping me achieve that objective. The artillery in this situation was not helping me to achieve that objective. Neither was missing on a deployment spot, but that was an oversight from being tired. That's not something you can learn from, except maybe don't play when you're tired. But in this situation, a risky move of trying to pull the artillery out of the situation and getting them somewhere else, or just getting them out of view, even if that means you're not going to use that artillery for the rest of the game because it's waiting in an area and can't move without being spotted, it still would have been the better move here, because the main objective is hold this airfield and potentially take some of these cities. That cannot be achieved very well with the deployment that you have there. And if they have one unit that does nothing but get in the way, not really support, and it only takes away movement hexes, get the hell rid of it. It doesn't make tactical sense, but it makes strategic sense. So yes, Bruck is right. You need to think about what is actually the strategic importance and adjust what your unit setup is accordingly. If you have it shitty deployed, try to fix that somehow. I didn't do that. The enemy did it for me, unfortunately. And that actually fixed my situation, as funny as it is. So that shows you that fixed my situation. That already shows you that I should have realized that was the solution right from the start. Just get rid of that artillery. Park it somewhere and... Yeah, I know. Yeah. You think it could have been saved. Some people also said if I deployed the fourth infantry, I would have been able to shield it.
That's what I wanted to say. And even if you decide the artillery is more important than the airfield, then it's at least a deliberate decision and not just something you stumble into.
I do not think deploying the artillery was a mistake. Generally, deploying anything without artillery is always an issue. Not necessarily. Your units are usually quite capable of handling their own without artillery support. I mean, okay, taking a heavily fortified position, yeah, probably not. But holding a position against purely infantry attacks, I mean, if tanks come in, you're in trouble. And if enemy infantry en masse comes in, you're also in trouble. But infantry versus infantry, I don't agree that you need artillery all the time. No, you don't. You can work with mass attack bonus. You can attack in different terrains, so your initiative bonus works for you. What do you think, Bruck? I don't agree with the sentiment that artillery support is always necessary.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think the two. For example, you, like I said before for Group 3, you could think about deploying light units there and just try to do whatever you can with them.
I mean, just look at it. I actually took this position and I won this after I lost the artillery. So that already shows you I did it without artillery. So it wasn't necessary. And if I had deployed 5 infantry here, or even if I only deployed 4, if I leave out that one deployment hex that I forgot about, I'm even in a better position. And I managed to take it with 3 infantry here without any artillery support. So I don't think that is impossible, and I don't think that would. It's not ideal, no, but I don't think it's automatically an issue.
But you really want to use a Stug.
Oh yeah, that would have been amazing.
That's a different topic. What I'm saying here is, if you're playing live and blind, and maybe a little bit tired, of course there will be mistakes. the important thing is not that mistakes are made, sondern how you deal with the mistakes.
Game on, yeah, but 3 cities to take. You can take cities with just mass attack bonus. Especially since I had air support here. I mean, this is specifically the place where we have the airfield that we're supposed to hold. Then why not use air support? I mean, we have level bombers. That anti-aircraft gun is not that strong. Our level bombers might get damaged a little bit, but you still have air support to reduce the entrenchment. That would not be a major issue. With mass attack bonus of 3 to 4 infantry, you can take a city easy. Especially since one of these units was a Fallschirmjäger, which has crazy initiative bonus. They're shitty on the defense, but on the attack, they're amazing. So I don't think that would have been an issue even with taking the cities. And if you always attack with the Fallschirmjäger first, you don't even take that many losses. If you reinforce it with normal replacements, if necessary, after 1 or 2 attacks, you can always keep the auxiliary Fallschirmjäger for the first attack, and then if there gets return damage, it will be the one taking it, and your core units will always be strong and can finish the job. So I don't think so. Even taking these 3 cities, that still would have been possible just with infantry.
The other point is they don't have to do it. Support from the West will come eventually.
Yeah, that and air support. Yeah, they don't even have to do it on their own. They have air support. They have, if you play the naval version, they even have a cruiser that can help. I unfortunately didn't have that heavy cruiser. That would have been nice. But yeah, there is support. If you can't do it, just retreat into the mountains and just take one of these objectives. If you can't hold on to the airfield, you have to think about that, obviously. That has implications. As Brock said, then you need to keep an eye on the big picture. If you decide that you have to give up this airfield, that also means you have to give up the eastern position, at least for now, because that means you don't have the range to bomb those tanks. That means those tanks would be able to attack you, meaning you can't hold that eastern position. That means the eastern position needs to pull back. Those are all implications that you need to keep in mind when you make such a decision. But yeah, as Brock said, you can wait for support from the east, you can get air support. It still would have been possible. Artillery not being here is not an issue. I even think that you could win this entire map without deploying artillery at all. If you have enough infantry to deploy, that is. If you deploy basically only infantry, you still can win this map. I'm pretty convinced of that.
Yeah, the losses would be.
Yeah,
harsh,
you might play losses, but you wouldn't lose units. You could still do it.
Yeah.
You need a couple more level bombers, maybe. I think you should probably have at least 2 level bombers on the map. Some of your infantry should be heavy hitting, so you probably want 2 heavy infantry at least, and probably both of your pioneers, because entrenchment will definitely be a problem, so you need your pioneers. And you will take hits, yeah, but it still can be done.
Yeah, but I think now we...
You wanted to talk about the left group.
Each other, finally. Let's talk about Group 1. And here I think there's a little bit of a disparity. There's nothing really to criticize here. But this is the group you played the most cautiously, and I think this is a disparity because the other 2 groups you played extremely hyper-aggressively.
Probably because I felt I had no other choice. On the left one, I had all the time in the world.
I understand why you did it, but my reaction immediately would be to play Group 1 even more aggressive, just to break through and get to the other groups.
Yeah, but that was your objective, to break through. I basically focused, okay, I just need to take the objectives with every group. And that meant I had basically 15 times to get these objectives that are right in front of me. So I didn't feel pressured. That's why I played it very slowly.
The point. Why? That I don't understand.
Because I played with the objective to take every hex with just the group that is there. I didn't intend to link up. maybe that is a mistake. I still say that has roleplay reasons why I did that. But yeah, it's obviously if you plan to break through, then you need to put a little bit more speed behind your movements. Yeah, that I agree with. Yes, but the reason why I went so slowly was I have everything right in front of me. I wait for my reinforcements and then I take it slow because I basically only have to get like 5 hexes away from me and I have 15 turns to do so.
But I'm not sure that this are actually the orders, or because you could have deployed ships as well in the center or landing boats.
Yes, so I could have, but I think that was a mistake by you, actually, because they clearly said there's a major naval force arriving from the east, avoid them at all costs. Going for a naval landing in the center, based on that information, for me, was a strategic mistake. And you almost lost the unit because of it. I think if you hadn't deployed everything ideally and blocked those units as they were, and if the AI hadn't had this unfortunate tendency to always go for your ships first before they go for your landing troops, I think you would have lost 2 to 3 units. Because those cruisers did have, under certain circumstances, the ability to get to your landing force. I was fully convinced that landing in the center was a major risk, and I was not going to do that. I know I could have done that, and I could have sped up things a little bit more. I did not want to do that. That seemed to me too much of a risk. I also didn't know, are there any submarines in here or shit like that? I only had like 3 destroyers or something like that. I didn't even have the big shielding force that you had. So under those circumstances, I judged the situation too risky to land in that area.
Yeah, I totally get it, especially for your setup, but you could at least have deployed on this on the center shore half isle thing.
Yeah, I didn't.
It's not an ideal landing spot.
Yeah, I didn't want to do that precisely for the reason that you explained in your video. Then units move in and block your landing sites and blah, blah, blah. I saw that as the most likely option, especially since there's a city that can immediately see anything that is close to the shoreline. I thought that wasn't worth it. I thought I would lose more time that way than gain anything. I thought if I move anything there, they're going to block my landing forces and blah, blah, blah. That's just going to be annoying, and I might not be able to get out of there fast enough. I thought I do have the time. I'd rather just land everything in one place, focus all my forces in one go, and then make a giant push from that point in one direction. Everything else seemed...
I think that's a big difference in our mindset going in there, because I didn't think I have time, because I expected a huge force in this mountain region, and I was really stressed to push through there, and it turned out there is nothing. But could have been, so it's always debatable. Like I said, it's a judgment call, and it turns out landing in the middle is not a good idea. But on the other hand, it could turn out that it's the only way to get to that objective. So yeah, I think that's a judgment call.
Yeah, as I said, in the middle, in my opinion, was too close to the enemy navy. Since my navy was so much smaller, I just think I didn't have the necessary forces to stop them. I was also 1 level bomber short on you. So taking out that enemy force took me a lot longer than you. They actually got very easily in range to do shore bombardment, and I focused my level bombers basically at some turns exclusively on weakening them. I was basically convinced that that's also why that middle position I felt was a little bit threatened, even more so, because I knew if they don't get into a good position relatively soon, I'm not only going to get shelled by that artillery, but the enemy cruisers will get in range and do shore bombardment on top of that. And with only 3 infantry in that position and an artillery that is already threatened, I saw that as a position that was about to be annihilated. In the west, on that half island, I guess you could try that. It's a matter of how much do you expect to try and hinder you. You only had 1 tank hindering you. If there's other shit in there, a scout or something like that, and they block 2 of those hexes, I mean, if you only get the 2 upper ones, you can deploy a artillery in that completely isolated hex, and then an infantry or something else right next to it, and that will already give you an opportunity to push whatever else is there back so you can deploy more. But if there's 2 units blocking you there, you basically already can't land anywhere really realistically.
No, I totally agree. I decided not to land there as well.
So I didn't even try that. I saw that as the most likely outcome, that's why I didn't do it, and the center was too risky for me. So the wisest course of action for me seemed to be land in the area that can easiest be assured not to be observed, and then risk being temporarily being in a bottleneck and just focus everything on one point and then push ahead. So yes, middle position is a problem. The middle position is weak and at the same time the most threatened. So wanting forces there as soon as possible is certainly something you can think about. It's just, it should be clear to anybody who does that it's going to be risky, because if you don't play ideally with your navy, you run the risk of being shelled by those cruisers. So that is a risky thing to do, and you need to play that very well. It's basically what you do in Sea Lion. Do I try to push my landing force as quickly as I can to the shore so I have more turns to actually win? Or do I make sure all the enemy ships are out of the way first? It's a decision you have to make. Both can be viable, but one is riskier. Of course, you run the risk also of running out of time if you don't do it. That is for sure. Yeah,
another risk. I was worried about 2 things: running out of time and there being a huge fleet. One, I had to quickly clear my landing forces out of the way, so I really rushed the landing just to get to the shore before the huge navy arrives.
Yeah, scout plane is a huge boost for you. Yeah, sure. I even had one and I could see what was coming in. I'm not sure by what time. I think that's actually the first turn that I made.
You immediately spotted them. That was huge for you, because if I had spotted those ships on the first turn, I would have been in no threat whatsoever. Yeah. Because I could immediately bomb them down.
Yeah, I immediately moved my scout to the east, which I only deployed because I didn't know what else to deploy. I only had heavy units left. But yes, it definitely helps here. And I mean, realistically, if you have intel that a fleet is coming in, that's probably what you would do. Send a recon unit there to try and find them. I'm pretty sure that's what you would do if you were the Italian Navy. But yes,
that's what I tried to do. But I think I was 1 hex short to actually spot them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you got to be lucky, but yeah, it is certainly an issue that these cruisers are even over strength is not helping either. I mean, they almost one-shot your scout, and you got super lucky that infantry didn't finish it off.
But that was the one-shot thing. I don't think that's normal damage, because if I shoot at landing boats with my units, the battleship, but
with the light cruiser at 12 over strength, I think that will definitely, on average, do 7 to 8 damage.
I'm not sure, but it might be.
Those things almost.
They have 2 experience. Probably.
Those things will usually bring down a destroyer 6 points. So I'm pretty sure that was, 9 points was definitely the upper thing, but I think that would have even been able, with a lucky roll, it could even have one-shotted it. So, well, bring the right tools for the job and you can easily tackle this map. Well, yeah, normally we would deploy tanks here. If you just deploy one Panzer IV, you're already in a much better position. One Panzer IV can turn this entire map around. But
yeah, we're stuck.
yeah, but we handicapped ourselves. And to be fair, considering how much we handicapped ourselves, I think we both got the job done relatively efficiently. We took damage, some damage that we probably would have liked to avoid. You're lucky that that was a scout and you don't have to elite reinforce that. Yeah, it shows you this map definitely wasn't designed for what we were doing here. And it shows you that you can still do that. And just considering where we're going next, I think you should do this more often if you want to learn this game right, because it shows you what infantry can actually do. A lot of people playing this game underestimate infantry and pack their core full of tanks. Infantry is a very powerful unit, especially if they're experienced, and they can do a lot of stuff, even without artillery, to emphasize again my previous point. And in Russia, considering we're playing with a historical core that doesn't always have the newest and best stuff, we will have to be able to do that, because sometimes our infantry will have to take out enemy tanks, because our tanks will probably not be able to do so. This scenario is the one scenario that can show you how powerful infantry really is. The infantry did great here. Our infantry really did an amazing job.
Well, maybe it's not the best showcase because we also took a lot of damage, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, fighting on a map with this much crap and this much cities and all that kind of shit. I mean, that is something you probably can't avoid. But I'm just saying infantry is able to do it.
Definitely, but it's maybe not the best example, because if you deploy tanks, it gets super easy. It just reinforces the strength of the tank, if you look at it that way. But definitely infantry can do the job, yeah.
Oh, I don't actually know about that. I mean, tanks will be helpful. They can take out stuff like the artillery easily, but there's also a ton of close terrain. I think this map also shows that tanks have their limits, because I think your tanks will get easily bottlenecked here and not be able to do much. They will definitely help taking out the enemy artillery, outflank certain positions, take them out once they are suppressed. But I don't actually think it's worth deploying more than 2 Panzer IVs here. I think the Panzer IIIs are not super helpful over here.
No, not really.
Because, I mean, what would they do? There's tons of entrenched infantry position, and holy hell, those Australian infantry are really good. So if you try to attack into that with a tank, you're going to get screwed easily.
Yeah, the British infantry in general is extremely dangerous.
Yeah, if the terrain is right for infantry, not open plains. Yeah, obviously. You wouldn't want to fight Prokhorovka with just infantry. That is obvious, but infantry can still do a lot of stuff, and they can take cities, can take certain positions, even take out tanks if the situation is right. And even that, I've seen, I mean, we both, I'm not sure we ran into that problem, but I think we both seen it happen. Heavy German infantry in the open, surprising a Russian tank and almost one-shotting it in an ambush. If your infantry has enough heart attack, if you surprise that enemy tank, that can still turn out very badly for the tank.
Yeah, definitely. And in multiplayer, I once one-shotted an elephant, full-strength elephant with a conscript.
Yeah, that is absolutely possible under the right circumstances.
In the open, it's possible.
It's absolutely possible. And it's not that unrealistic either. I mean, if you catch someone in a bad spot, I mean, this is why I try to mercilessly never put infantry on open hexes, even though in early war they take less damage there. I think we covered that in an earlier stream. Depends on what you're facing. If you're facing certain types of enemy infantry, going into close terrain is actually the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, it's horrible.
If you remember that the German infantry has a pretty big advantage in initiative, maybe not against British infantry, but against most other infantry. Under those circumstances, going into close terrain will actually cap your initiative, right? No, that doesn't work. No, that doesn't matter for infantry. But still,
damage will be huge.
The damage that you take will be huge. Yeah, the initiative will still be there, but in the open, that will still be much better because you have a high ground defense and an initiative advantage. That will work out much in your favor.
Yeah, but it's different. I think Richard Martin is playing Deductor's mode, and that's different there because the infantry has huge boost in close defense there.
Yeah, that is different, but I actually think that should probably not be that much. Because under certain circumstances, you can actually read those in the after action reports. Tanks try to push into close terrain, and the reports that they learned from that basically read that tanks are not ideal for that, but they didn't read that they get completely wiped out. You know, they take unnecessary losses and they're not ideal for it because they can't see shit, but they don't report that they get completely wiped out either. So they're not the best tool for the job, but it's not like they're completely helpless there. I don't think a mod should overstate that point. Tanks are not that helpless either.
Yeah, and you have to think about the shells or high explosive shells in the forest will produce a lot of splinters.
A lot of shrapnel, yeah.
A lot of shrapnel and wood pieces. That is really dangerous for infantry.
Yeah, so tanks are not ideal for putting in there, but the reason is not so much that they can be easily attacked. They actually can't be because they still armored. The thing that usually happens is you can throw grenades at them and then they get immobilized because their tracks get blown off. But that's just the thing. They're not able to really efficiently push through an area like that, but they're also not completely defenseless. In such a confrontation, I think both sides would take basically equal losses. The tanks, once they start to fire, you're in trouble. The tanks would just not be able to push through there efficiently, or let me put it a different way. They would be able to push through there, but they're not easily capable of taking a position that is a forest, because in able to do so, you need to clear the forest of enemies. And in a forest, it's already hard to spot an enemy if you're on foot. If you're sitting in a tank and you just have vision slits, try to find someone in a forest. It's completely impossible. You can move through the forest, but there's no way you're going to clear the forest unless you blow the forest up. You're always going to miss somebody. So clearing an area can't be done with tanks, but that doesn't mean the tanks get all wiped out. There's a big difference there. If the reports and the military commanders right after the fact that the tanks are not suitable to take forest positions, that doesn't mean the tanks are all gonna die. That simply means the tanks can't see shit in there, so they can't take the enemy out. It's a big difference. That doesn't mean all the tanks are gonna get lost. That's not what happened historically.
Yeah, and I was interested. I looked up another video by, I think, Military History Visualized. Reviewing research on what actually took out the most tanks, and I think the small typical infantry weapons like grenades and mines and satchels, those charges that were placed on the tanks was really, really low.
Yeah, because those were basically emergency measures if you didn't have anything else.
Yeah.
Those were not the primary means of doing it. This is
the typical close defense weapons I think the game tries to emulate somehow.
Yeah, I mean, you also have to think about the following. Taking out a tank is not necessarily completely destroying it. If you can throw grenades and satchel charges and all that kind of shit at a tank and you take out a road wheel, or you take out the tracks, or you blow up the sprocket wheel or anything like that, the tank is going to be useless and the crew is going to abandon the tank. But that doesn't mean they don't come back the next day, tow the tank away and repair it within a couple of hours. You know, in the moment, as the infantry, you have effectively taken out the tank, but that doesn't mean you destroyed the tank. The next day, that tank is going to be back in action. So just because those measures were useful in the tactical situation, if you had to, it's not a useful means of actually taking out a tank for the duration. That's why all the militaries came up with the bazooka and all the other weapons that actually really take out the tank. The other shit most of the time only immobilizes the tank and makes it temporarily abandon. The crew will abandon the tank because they can't fight in it anymore, because they can't move. But that doesn't mean within one day that tank will be back to operation. That's actually what happened in France. Most of the losses of the German tanks were repaired within a couple of hours, maybe in a day. So they had sometimes to read about, oh my god, the Germans took so high losses. Yeah, but most of those were not actually that bad. Most of those were repaired within a couple of days at most. So
yeah, it's the same in Africa.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to immediately start case red after case yellow. I mean, how are you going to do that if you really lost those tanks? No, they didn't. They towed them away, repaired them, and they were back in action. It's also, I also read about an after-action report. Well, not technically an after-action report, more like a post-mortem about the French campaign, where some military commanders basically analyzed reports about how their units had actually performed. Mostly, of course, the new Panzer divisions, and they basically reported that, which was actually interesting. They found that certain Kampfgruppen, certain task forces were forming on the fly all the time with mixed panzers, infantry, and artillery, and all that kind of stuff. It's basically everything that is now praised as the flexible German approach. This commander actually criticized that. He said that only happens because we don't train the units well enough to actually work that way on a brigade level. So we don't have the high command leadership necessary to actually pull that off on a higher level. So the lower leaders feel they have to take up the reins and form these task groups to be able to do the job. That's actually an interesting perspective, that he criticized that and said that shouldn't be necessary. It should work on the high level, but our higher leaders are not trained enough, among other reasons, because we don't have enough training areas where we can actually train on that scale. That was actually an interesting thing. And another thing that he said was obvious, that their shells had very little effect on the French tanks, and that was a huge morale problem for the German troops when they noticed that the only weapon they basically have that can do anything about any enemy tanks is the 88. That was a huge problem. That first of all, that they needed to deploy more of those, and they needed to upgun their tanks. Otherwise, this was gonna turn into a huge problem, and they shouldn't expect, just because the French didn't take advantage of this fact, they shouldn't expect the next enemy to pay them the same courtesy, basically. But what was interesting was that they also reported that the rate of fire of the German tanks was massively superior to the French tanks, and that sometimes that was enough because the firepower from the Panzer III and IV at this rapid shooting, and also accurate fire, they also said they were very accurate, sometimes forced the enemies to abandon their tanks simply because that much incoming fire was demoralizing them. So it wouldn't have done anything to the tank, but yeah, imagine that. If you get hit after hit after hit from big guns, even if they don't penetrate, you're gonna get scared out of your skull. So a lot of the times the French actually surrendered their tanks after being fired upon with massive rate of fire by the German tanks, even though those shots didn't actually do anything. So that's... I mean, I heard the same report about Arras where people abandoned their tanks when they got shot at by Panzer IIs and 20mm flak guns, because they had such a high rate of fire, those guns. 20mm wouldn't have done anything to those tanks, but there were so many shots coming in, and it was so demoralizing that the French abandoned their positions anyway. So sometimes there's not even the destruction that is necessary. And in the game, you never know if your unit loses a point. What is that actually? Is that actually a destroyed tank, or is that just a damaged tank that can't work anymore? I mean, it's a tank that can't fight anymore, so it's a loss. I'm pretty sure if an infantry unit loses 9 points, that's not all dead. It's probably a whole bunch of captured and wounded too. In the game, basically the only thing is matter how many people are left that can actually still fight. Not necessarily everything that gets taken out is necessarily destroyed or dead. It just can't fight anymore.
Yep.
So, yeah, as the chieftain calls it, significant emotional event. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, you also have to keep in mind, as the chieftain and the World of Tanks crew also said, those I'm not sure what the other historian was called, but he also pointed it out. A lot of these French units got their tanks basically a couple of weeks before the Germans invaded, so they were still training on them and not familiar with them. And if you have just gotten your tank and you don't really know what it's capable of, and then you have so much incoming fire, well, yeah, the tank can stand that fire, but do you know that? Sitting inside that thing, are you sure? That's not going to penetrate. That's the problem. You're not sure. Are you going to bet your life on that? That's the problem.
The other point is, eventually one of those shots is going to penetrate. So it's
eventually it's going to hit a weak spot or something, and that's also what they said. They can compensate for the lack of good guns with being so incredibly accurate, which was in part due to the good guns, but also of course in part due to the great optics that the Germans had. So yeah, sometimes they shot off road wheels, they shot into the gun and disabled it or something, hit some kind of weak spot. There's reports of anti-tank guns shooting shot after shot after shot into these big Samoa tanks, or even the bigger ones, and eventually hitting a vision slit or something and taking it out. So yes, they did that. Of course, it was demoralizing that most of their shot didn't do anything. But if they write that the Germans were demoralized by that, of course, you don't know whether the other side receiving that much fire isn't just as demoralized. So the Germans obviously don't know what's going on inside the enemy tank. They just see it spark off, but they don't know whether the French inside the tank are not also panicking. So yeah, war is not fun, and I certainly wouldn't have wanted to be part of the Battle of Crete, because yeah, that was not fun at all. And I think I especially pretty much stuck to the historical outcome. I took it, but I got my ass wiped doing it. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to look at it. I have one more scene prepared, but that's purely tactical now.
Yeah, sure. I mean, don't get me wrong. I appreciate everything you said. I just tried to, push the point even further and see how to apply it in this specific situation. I even agree that I actually did make certain of these mistakes in this situation. So which turn should I go to?
Turn 7. This one really stood out to me.
7 where?
Start at the beginning, I think.
No, I mean where on the map?
It's Group 1. You're trying to fight that huge pioneer unit.
Oh yeah.
And that got you really frustrated because of the rolls. And
so should I just let it run, or?
Yeah, but switch to turn 7. I don't see what you're doing. That's the problem.
I'm already at turn 7 looking at the first group, but I haven't started the game yet. So we're at the beginning of turn 7.
Yeah. The interesting part is when you start attacking this infantry unit, the pioneer.
Well, I'm just gonna run it. Yeah, first I'm gonna bomb the tanks.
Maybe it's turn 8, actually.
Turn 8.
I noted down the minutes, but that doesn't apply. Let's see.
Let me go one further. So on turn 8, the Pioneer is actually in the forest.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. So I'm cleaning up over here in group 3.
Yeah, at this point you already had one.
Not quite yet. The enemy tanks are still alive, but yeah, I'm in a much better position. Okay, now I have one. Now I just dropped that enemy tank to 3. But yeah, the eastern situation is now pretty much under control, yeah.
Yeah, it's more of a question of how long does it take and how much damage do you still take. So, and if you take a look at this situation, there are several things that are going on. Well, now it's really difficult for me because of the delay.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you what happened. So basically, both of my artillery in the west just shelled the Pioneer. The first one didn't do anything. The second one reduced it to 11 and suppressed it to 5.
Yeah, now what you should have done is block its retreatment pass, call in the level bomb and surrender it. That would be the end of it, taking no losses at all. And I think it took you, I don't know, 5 or 6 attacks to finally not destroy it. So
yeah, I probably agree with that. Although I'm not sure that level bomber would have actually been necessarily capable of suppressing it full, but probably enough to force the surrender, yeah.
Yeah, you have... The problem is you don't have any units around you that can do low damage to get full amount of prestige out of it.
No, I do. I have a bridge engineer at 3 tanks right next to it.
Ah, yeah. You do?
Yeah.
Ah, sure. Yeah, perfect. So that's the ideal situation for a juicy overstrength target.
Yeah, but I agree. That is my biggest weakness still in the game. That's the one skill I have not yet mastered at all. Seeing these opportunities, I see some of them. I miss too many still. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and this is really the perfect opportunity. There's yeah, I can't think of many that are better. Maybe if it's a Churchill tank, that's even more prestige you can get off that. But it saves a lot of trouble. It gains your experience. It reduces your damage, and that really adds up.
That Pioneer was super stupid at moving forward like that to begin with.
Yeah, but you could even have the turn before engineered somehow a situation where you can lure. You engineered a situation to lure it in, so that's already good.
I'm not sure I could have. I don't know what I could have pushed behind it.
Now, you could have pushed it back and then surrendered it maybe, but...
Yeah, okay, I don't know whether that wouldn't have done too much damage to it to be worth it. But yeah, I agree. This at this point, definitely, now I should have surrendered that guy. And I sometimes a unit annoys me so much that I totally forget about that. But I also don't check how entrenched the unit is often enough. I don't check whether I can easily reduce it to 0 often enough. That definitely is a problem. Yeah, I totally agree. This is a prime candidate, especially since it's overstrength and it has so much worth. How much does that thing actually cost? It costs 185, probably more if it has a transport. So yeah, that absolutely, yeah. This is the wrong thing to do. I'm pushing it back. I mean, under normal circumstances, I would have been able to take it out. But even so, the surrender would still have been better.
Yeah, it's not only the prestige you get, it's just the trouble it saves you and the damage you don't take.
Yeah, there's actually another thing that I'm noticing here. Actually, let me check something real quick. Because considering how well this unit did... now the pause function is not working again. Can I somehow... Can't I look at enemy units and figure out... No, that doesn't work in a replay, right? I was interested in whether that thing actually has a hero on it. That gives us a defensive bonus or something. Because that thing was super lucky. I'm gonna look at that in a scenario editor later.
Yeah, but... Just seeing how annoyed you get in the video. And
yeah, I agree with that.
The effort you're putting into that. And here we have another situation. Yeah, I don't think you can actually solve that. But this is a very complex situation here with the cavalry units. And you probably can engineer situations where you can lure them into traps. Especially with the anti-tank unit around.
Yeah, but in this situation I wasn't... yeah, I probably could have done that. You're right. I could have moved.
Yeah, the
not
moment you
sure.
move forward, it's not.
No, in these circumstances, I can't do it anymore. No, because that other cavalry would still spot my artillery. But yeah, I agree. I could have done that. But in this moment, I was purely focusing on that pioneer. There's by the way, another point, guys. If I had done what Brock just suggested and used another level bomber, which probably would have done the job because I had my upgraded DO 217 bomber available, and that is actually a very good level bomber, that probably would have done the job of suppressing that thing completely. I didn't do that and bombed the Pioneer in the open twice with my level bombers. If I had surrendered it, I would have still had one level bomber left, and that could have taken out one of those two cruisers. Like this, I still had an 11 strength cruiser right next to me. So if I had surrendered that Pioneer, I could have bombed that cruiser and avoided further damage.
Yeah, sure. And those things are, well, they are snowballing. So, because in your video you were wondering whether this surrender thing actually yields that much prestige or can explain the difference in our prestige levels. No, it can't. But not alone. But there is a lot of linked to it, because the amount of attacks you used up here slows you down. Doesn't matter in this exact scenario, because time is not an issue here, but in a different scenario it could very well matter if you have to rush the last turn or not. And usually if you rush the last turn just to get the victory hex, you're taking immense damage. So yeah, those things are really important and can snowball and have a huge effect, definitely.
What's that guy called? General Freiberg, or is that cutting it off and that's supposed to be Freiberg? I have to look up.
I don't know. The names are sometimes gruesomely. I looked up this mysterious hero named Bar, the German
Bear
pilot, and he's actually Bear.
Yeah, he's supposed to be Bear, but the guy that made the job doesn't have that letter on his keyboard. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's Freiberg, yeah.
Freiberg. I don't know who that even was.
It should be Freiberg.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that guy actually had a very distinguished career. He fought at Battle of Greece, fought in the Battle of Crete, fought at the Battle of El Alamein, fought at the Second Battle of Casino. Oh yeah, that guy went on to do quite a bunch of stuff. Well, I guess he won't do that in your one. But yeah, he commanded the 2nd New Zealand Division, including the Second Battle of El Alamein. So he helped defeat Rommel, or stop Rommel. Yeah. So
good thing we took him out.
Yeah. So interesting. He was one of the more well-known New Zealandish commanders, I guess. Featured in Tig's Crusader series. Okay.
Yeah, I remember him. Sure.
I haven't watched all of those yet. I have so much stuff to watch.
They're really good.
I know. I've seen some of them. I just haven't seen them all because, oh my god, I can't even get ahead with doing my own stuff, let alone watching stuff. I also have to watch the World War II series.
You mentioned this guy a ton of times. Now I remember. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up because, yeah, They took him out.
Yeah, and it goes further on. So if you next you're going to attack this cruiser or crusader tank. I think it's a cruiser.
Mm-hmm. But now it's already gone. I'm attacking it now with the anti-tank gun. That takes it out immediately. But
okay.
I could have forced the surrender on that thing easily as well. You're right.
Not only that, but you're not checking that it's not fully suppressed. Attack with the infantry, take damage. So once again, using the fighter before and not after would save you a point of damage here.
Yeah, yeah.
So these are a whole bunch of small things that don't easily go unnoticed, but really make a difference in the long run.
Yeah, and here I can tell you guys another mindset that gets you into doing this. I basically got myself out of a situation that almost meant complete annihilation in 2 spots, in the middle and in the east. I somehow won that. So I was now so relieved and think, okay, everything's done, everything's good, I can easily win this, that I didn't care anymore about 1 damage spot here and 1 damage spot there, because I had avoided the big bad thing. So this didn't matter, but it actually does matter. So even if you're in a situation where you have already won and everything went great and you achieved something really cool, keep focused until the battle is over. Don't, even if you at the end do 1 thing and then you take 2 damage on something, even it doesn't really matter, but it still costs you. So
yeah, that's a problem for me too. In the end, I always take the most damage.
Yeah, that is a very easy thing to do, because you're in that happy state and I've done it, and then you stop.
You're tired and exhausted.
Yeah, you're tired, exhausted, and you stop worrying because you know you have already won, and then you start to get careless. And that's not just gaming, that happens in the real military too. There's more than enough examples where the battle was already won and then some unit took stupid losses because they took a stupid risk that wasn't necessary. It's an easy mistake to make, and that can also sum up in the end. Yes, absolutely. There were 2. Even before we actually went into this, when you told me you're going to show me stuff that I did wrong, even when I watched my own video for one moment and I saw this tank again, I thought, man, this would have been a good target for surrender. and I didn't think about that during the mission. I just wanted to get rid of it so it wouldn't interfere with me. Yeah, I need to keep an eye open for these opportunities. Absolutely. Even in this situation, I could still try to actually push a unit in the back of the city and actually try to surrender some of these cities. Yeah, there's definitely more surrender options here that I didn't take advantage of.
Yeah, and if you really try, this infantry in the port, that's also a victory hex, can be surrendered. One of the cavalry units could probably be surrendered. This is a huge pocket, basically.
Yeah, I actually, what I said earlier, that I wanted to put all my reinforcements here to have then a very strong force to push to the east. That also should give you the opportunity to block the map so much that you have, have the enemy blocking itself constantly and then force surrender after surrender. I didn't take enough advantage of that, despite the fact that I gave myself the opportunity by having so many forces here. Yes, absolutely. I could have done that, and I could have probably compensated for a bunch of the losses that I took by doing so. Yeah, I should probably also have stopped bombarding that Valentine in the east and instead move my units into position, keep it down with the level bomber, and then actually go for a surrender, because it was completely isolated and its soft attack isn't actually that high. So I could easily have put the auxiliary Fallschirmjägers in there to block it and yeah, maybe even take the damage. The units would have been able to take it and the worth of that tank would have easily compensated for taking one hit. The Matilda wouldn't have moved out. I could have kept that down. I should have tried to go for the surrender on the Valentine. I'm still too inclined to always go for tanks with the Stuka. I should sometimes check, isn't there an opportunity to isolate this tank and force a surrender on it? Which even has historic significance, because especially if you follow the current World War II channel and you look at what happened to the Russians in Finland, that was exactly what they did at first, stupidly. And it's also what happened in France with the French. They send in the tanks without support, and then they get isolated and they have to abandon that or run away if they have the chance to. So isolating a tank and then forcing a surrender on it is actually a viable tactic, and those units aren't cheap. If I look at the price of a Valentine, 276, considering they were constantly reinforcing it, I mean, that definitely was also a good thing to do. Keep bombing them, because I think that drained a huge amount of prestige from the AI. I think that's why they couldn't reinforce Heraklion as much. I think otherwise they would have probably been able to buy a whole bunch of crap there, and that probably could have cost me the decisive victory. So on that end, bombing them the entire time was a good thing, but in the end, once I was able to actually go in the offensive, I probably should have switched to level bombers.
Yeah, maybe. But on the other hand, it's always a good idea to bomb, especially the Valentine here, because it pins it. It won't move. It will just reinforce, and that way it's under control.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I should have done that. I should have stunned that at the beginning. It was always reinforcing anyway, so that wouldn't have taken the opportunity for a surrender away. But the moment I'm actually able to engage it, then I should have stopped trying to do damage to it, and at that point I should have tried to surrender it. Initially, it was the right thing to do, I agree, but at the end, where I could actually engage it, I should have done something else.
Yeah, and another thing I noticed, you tend to get worked up very much about bad rules, and that's why I chose this situation with the Pioneer, because immediately after that you did a bunch of small mistakes. Maybe it's because you were in this elated state, or because it was because you were worked up about this Pioneer.
At that late in the scenario, I would bet on being tired, but it definitely, because I had that a bunch of scenarios in a row that some of this stuff happens. But
but it was funny because it was so unnecessary. So that's why I chose this.
Yeah, I basically gave myself, took away the satisfaction of seeing this guy surrender away, and instead turned it into a frustrating situation. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
You had him at the perfect spot. Couldn't have been better.
Yeah, I don't have the eye for that, and I need to develop the eye for that, because, Rommel is mostly gaining more prestige than a victory hex. Yeah, Carol, absolutely. No, that was actually game on. Absolutely. On Rommel, a good surrender can be more valuable than a victory hex, yes. Absolutely. I don't know, how much prestige do you get for a surrender? The full item price, or? Full price, what's left alive. Holy crap, yeah, that can easily be more. How much do you get for a victory hex? 50? On Rommel?
25.
No, for a victory hex, for a yellow one.
50, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. If a tank costs over 200, even if you have it at half strength and you force it to surrender, it's still gonna be worth more than even a victory hex, yeah. Absolutely. A normal hex, with 25 everything is worth more than a normal hex.
Yeah, and if you see overstrength units, that's always... How can I force that to surrender?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to be better at that in Russia, because the KV tanks will be prime candidates for that. Some of the times that will be the only way to get rid of them. There are even some tanks that are unhistorical, like KV5s and stuff. I'm not going to show you where those show up, but they're going to show up. Yeah, I unless you blow them up with heavy infantry in a city, those are super expensive. So if you can force those to surrender, that's the thing to do. I think that's the most expensive tank that the Russians have. Well, probably an IS-2 later is a little bit more expensive, but certainly an IS-3. I'm not even sure whether we're going to face an IS-3. I think that was added for Soviet Corps. I don't think before that even existed. But an KV-5, absolutely. That will be a prime candidate. I hope I will be able to surrender those when they show up, because they are worth a huge amount. Yeah, they are super hard to suppress, but most of the expensive tanks are. So, especially if they're in close terrain, then it's easier to blow them up. Yeah, because it's harder to suppress them, but easier to blow them up. But it's still worth trying to do so, because they're worth so much money on Rommel. That is so valuable.
Yeah, and it's not only the money, it's you have to think about the damage you don't take.
Yeah, sometimes blowing them up in close terrain is the easiest way to do that and avoid damage. But still, it's still worth trying to surrender them. Of course, not if you're going to take huge damage in return, no, because that's, again, costs that you have to compensate for. But if you can do it, it's worth trying. And yes, the heavy tanks, the KV doesn't have to be a KV-5. The KV-1 is already difficult enough to suppress. But that's another thing that you can think about. Deductor does that all the time. I think you, Brock, have done that plenty of times also. Level bomb a tank that is low on ammo to begin with. It's gonna run out of ammo, then you attack it with something that can take the hit and it's completely out of ammo, then you put 2 units next to it and it's completely useless. And then you can try to force a surrender on it at your leisure, because it can't do anything in return. That is gonna be very important.
In Africa Corps a lot with the Churchills.
Yeah, that's gonna be super important to do to the KVs, because the KVs are yet another tank that is very low on ammo, just like the Tiger and some other stuff. Low on fuel, low on ammo. If you run it out of fuel and ammo, it's going to be useless. Yeah, that's going to be the way to go.
The only problem with the Soviet tanks is that they have high soft attack. That makes the strategy a little bit less viable. But
yeah, but if you have a good tank with a lot of defense,
yeah, sure, it's doable. But
then you can take that one shot.
On the British tanks, because they do basically no damage to your infantry.
Yeah, true. Churchills are very, some of the tanks are very easy to engage with the infantry, yeah. What, I like the half-track transport. Yeah, half-track transport, depends on what kind of tank you're engaging with it, but...
it's great for the final blow on the surrender, because doesn't do damage.
Oh yeah, that definitely, yeah. I have now 2 of those, because I'm allowed to have 2 on my 1st Panzer Division. The other one doesn't have any. Great for maximizing surrender prestige pinatas. Yep, absolutely. There's also going to be later a scout that will be great for it, because there's 2 scout versions of the latest scout. You can get one with the anti-tank gun, and you can get one with the small howitzer. That small howitzer will be ideal to surrender tanks, because that basically doesn't do anything. It has very low heart attack.
Yeah.
That will be great to surrender tanks. And it will also be great to engage soft targets, because it does a shit ton of damage to those. I'm probably going to do for that, because the heart attack version, by the time we get that on the Russian front, there won't be any hard target that will be good. It will be a good idea to attack that with a scout. So, yeah, I will probably go for the soft attack version of that thing. That will be great for sneaking in and taking out anti-aircraft guns or artillery or shit like that. Then force the tank to surrender when being reinforced. Dive bomb them and then force them after they have reinforced, you mean? Yeah.
That's also great, because then it's already done the job of suppression for you.
Yeah. That can work. Yeah, the 8-wheel, whatever it is, I think the 233, that has the long gun and it has the short gun. There's 2 versions of it that you can get. Yeah, but again, I thought this was good. And don't, by the way, Brock, don't let... if you got the impression that I'm trying to discuss this with you, don't let that discourage you from doing this again. I think this is important. I think we're both trying to make 2 different points about the same situation.
Yeah, in the middle we got a little bit... I don't know how to call it. Yeah, we were talking about different things, and that made it a little bit difficult.
Yeah, but
I hope it was not too hard to listen to.
Yeah, and again, I want to point out to anybody who listened, I wasn't arguing against Brock. I completely agree with all his points, so I wasn't angry or anything at all. I was just thinking about the situation again, and I came to, I wouldn't say to different conclusions, I came to conclusions based on a different point. Or about a different point. So we're basically trying to make 2 different points. But I think we also came to the conclusion that we both have different ways of approaching things, especially where we talked about the landing, that you felt more worried about the time and I felt more worried about the danger.
Yeah, I felt very worried about the danger too, but for another reason. The best thing to do is get to the shore as quickly as possible. I really thought I had 1 or 2 turns to clear the zone, and then the fleet would come in. That's how I interpreted the briefing.
Yeah,
because this was my deployment zone, and they said avoid them at all cost. Was like, phew, rush to the coast.
Yeah. Also, some people told me when I engaged the enemy fleet with my destroyers and my bombers, and they said, "Oh, they told you to avoid them at all costs."
No, that's only going for those landings.
Yeah. I actually interpret that order the same way. They told me to avoid that. They didn't tell my Italian allies to avoid them.
No.
They specifically say those are there to shield my landing force against that fleet. So that's exactly what I did. They don't mean stay away from them completely. They try to avoid them at all costs with your landing force. And that is obvious why. I mean, considering how many cruisers they have. I mean, how many did they have? 3 or 4?
3, yeah.
3. But 3 overstrength. Yeah, I mean, if only one of those gets through, well, you saw what happened to Brock's poor little scout.
But still lost no scout. That's the important
part. That's the funny part. That was the one time when that scout should have died. But yeah. And yeah, Caval, you're right. We certainly talked past each other as well, plenty of times. Yes, but yes. I think that's also the fun part in watching us both play the same scenario, though, that how we interpret certain threats differently, and based on that interpretation of the situation, we go for different approaches.
Yeah, and I think that's important to note, because I think that's important, and I don't think you should. It's different. You can't look for the ideal situation on a map, but if you played like a war game or historical game, I don't think that's the approach you should take. Because you have to make judgment calls, you have imperfect information, and yeah, if you make a mistake in judging a situation, well, so be it. Don't beat yourself up on that because there's a better solution to what you have done. Well, okay, I could have done it differently, but that was my decision, and the important point is what you do with that, I think.
Yeah, that's actually a valuable lesson that I learned when I took my platoon leader training, because when I was actually tested in the end, they were basically training you in different situations, like clearing a forest, cleaning a building, escorting a convoy, all that kind of shit. And in the end, you were going to be tested in one of those situations and you didn't know which. And I got tested on the convoy escort, and I gave an order that was, according to my commanding officer, a perfect order. I would have gotten an easy A grade on that. And then I ran into a situation where I suddenly thought, what if an attack happens here? And I completely changed my order in the middle of the operation because I suddenly didn't trust my own order anymore. I somehow got out of that, still passing the test, but I reduced my grade by quite a lot. And that's the thing. I gave a good order. I should have trusted in that order, and I should have just stuck with it, especially since that order contained contingencies. So even if I run into a situation that I didn't anticipate and something's gonna go wrong, I already gave orders and I should have trusted my guys to react appropriately and just handle the situation as it arises. But I tried to anticipate everything, and that messed up more than it actually did any good. And that is a lesson that you have to learn in these kind of trainings as a commander. If you play a game or you do the real thing, you can never find the perfect solution, and you shouldn't get into a situation where you constantly end up questioning yourself. Do as best as you can up front and then just live in the situation. You can't anticipate everything, and you can't avoid sometimes making a mistake. You just have to deal with it when it happens. It's just what Ruck just said, just giving you a feedback that actually happens in real life as well. And that's not a good thing to do. You can't anticipate everything that could possibly happen. Just prepare as well as you can, try to make the best plan possible, and if it goes wrong, live in a situation and don't beat yourself up over it because it's too late to change it. Just do what you can. And in my play, you could see that even if you get into really, really bad situations, you can still get out of that. I think there was another map where people told me later that they didn't think I would be able to come back from a delay, and I did. That's because if you don't beat yourself up over it, but you try to keep fighting in a concentrated way, you can basically get out of most situations, even if they go wrong on you initially.
Yeah. And of course, you can view the whole thing as kind of a strategic challenge, and that's viable too, finding the best solution for a problem. But in my opinion, that's a completely different thing.
Yeah. Playing a scenario over and over again, trying to find the best approach. I mean, that's what war games are all about. Generals, and I think they do that on military academies plenty of times, where they look at an historical battle and give you the objective, okay, how would you do it? Find a better solution than what they did back then. Of course, that's one thing to do, but that's why we play blind, because we don't want to do that. We don't want to find the best situation with having all the knowledge. We want to make an initial plan and then just go for it and do it as it happens. And I mean, I did something on this map where that's what I was trying to explain earlier, where I put myself on purpose in a harder situation because I tried to go for the historical plan and then go from there and not already adjust the plan because I know it's probably not going to work. I was trying to go for the original plan that I know is going to land me into trouble, but then try to handle that as best I can. That was kind of an additional challenge, I guess. I still could have handled that better. I could still have changed like stuff like deployment, and so that was allowed. I was just trying to stick with the plan that every landing has to fight for its own. I was trying to solve this scenario under those conditions. That is something that we will sometimes do. I'm probably not going to always do it. Like, I know how they approached Minsk, by the way, for example, historically, but that's probably not 100% what I'm going to do. But I'm going to at least try to not if the briefing says one thing and historically the objective was one thing, to completely shift my approach to the game completely around and do something completely different. I'm probably not going to try that. As I said, the prime example, like going for Falgelb and not push through the Ardennes, like that. Okay, yeah, you can do that. Maybe that would have even worked, but that's not what the scenario is about. So
yeah, at least not in our
yeah
setup here.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to avoid that. I mean,
that's interesting to play around with it and
yeah,
try
absolutely.
it the other way. So,
yeah.
But that's a different thing. That's my point. And yeah, and doesn't mean that you shouldn't question your decisions afterwards. If it's always good to learn from mistakes.
Yeah, but you should try to learn from them, not do it to beat yourself up over it.
Yeah, exactly. And in the process, it's very important to stay focused and not restart and try again. I think that takes the fun out of it.
Yeah, that's actually an easy thing to do. When I hear a lot of people when they get into a hopeless situation, I've seen that a lot in the forums actually, where people say, "Oh, I got myself in this situation. I don't think I can win this anymore, or should I restart the campaign?" And a lot of people that are actually the more experienced players often say, "No. This is not completely lost yet. Just try to stay calm and you can still get out of this." That is actually one step to getting better with stuff. And you get that everywhere. I sometimes watch channels that have to do with hobbies that I don't even do. For some reason, I watch sometimes guitar channels, even though I don't play the guitar. And you hear that all over the place. It's people like, don't panic if you do a live concert and you make a mistake. Just keep playing. Don't panic. The probability is half of the people won't have even noticed. It's going all across. It's not just for this, it's everywhere. You're gonna make a mistake. And I've heard that from many motivational talks where people say the better you are, people think you're gonna make less mistakes. No, they always say no. Even the best people out there that are the best at their thing in the world, they're still gonna make mistakes. It's not going to go away. You can beat yourself over the head with it and you can train and learn as much as you want. That's never going to go away. You're still human. You're still going to make mistakes. You still use those mistakes to get better, but don't expect you will at some point stop making mistakes. That's never going to happen. So it doesn't pay worrying about it because there's no way you can do anything about it anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good ending point, at least for me.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, history wasn't super long this time, but yeah, this wasn't super critical, super complicated. It was a straightforward campaign back then. And I think the Russian campaign will compensate for that because that's going to be super complicated. And I actually vote for making the next cooperation stream after we're done with 1941. So basically, because I don't really know when we would make a cut. The only cut that makes sense was when they kind of stopped and regrouped and then pushed ahead again. But that would already be after Smolensk. So that would be in 2 scenarios. I don't think that's worth it. So we probably should play it all the way to the end, all the way to Moscow, and then make a break before we go into 1942.
Yep.
That also gives me more time to prepare that, because I have to basically handle 3 army groups. So
yeah, that's crazy. So maybe you should try to limit yourself and not...
yeah, I'm not going into
to cover everything.
Yeah, I'm going to limit myself and try not to go into too much detail, because I looked at it today. I have found reports of different Panzer divisions. I have found reports of individual units. If I went through all of that, I would go completely nuts. There's no way. I have enough sources, but there's no way I can process all that and definitely not talk about it within a reasonable amount of time here. I'm probably even gonna just go for what's the guy called again? There's this one guy that does the animated maps for the entire campaigns. The guy that is now doing the maps for the World War II channel.
I don't know.
Don't remember his name. Do you follow that channel, by the way?
I don't think so.
No, the channel that does week by week World War II. You absolutely have to. Look it up. It's simply called the world. No? Wow, my God. Let me look it up for you. If someone's faster in the chat than me, drop a link in the chat if you're allowed to. Carol, you're a moderator. You're allowed to. I know that you're subscribed to it. Let me see here. World War II. There we go. Because that thing is amazing.
Yeah, I most likely have seen it, but there are so many videos.
Yeah, they do basically one video a week about what happened in World War II. What is it now? 79 years? No, I don't know. Whatever, how many years it is ago. I
have not watched any of those videos.
Yeah, they do it week by week, so it's absolutely worth watching. It's not super long. I think it's 15 minutes per video or something like that, so every week. So they're now in March, early March 1940.
Yeah.
So yeah,
already subscribed.
And they also have a channel now, a cooperation with Sabaton, which they call Sabaton History, where they go, I think, also every week, and they go for one song of Sabaton, and Sabaton talks about how they made the song, and the other guy talks about what the historical background of the song was. So that is also a very nice channel. Let me go here. Also something people might want to look at. There we go. And yeah, as I said, there's one guy that does the maps for the World War II channel. You can probably find his channel in the video description of their videos. He did an animation of the entire first part of Barbarossa, and then the summer offensive of 1942, and I think he even did the Battle of Kursk already. He basically has an animation of the entire front line with every division being a small circle. I have no idea how he did that, animating that many divisions. But yeah, I'm probably going to reference that a little bit, because there's no way I'm going to draw a day-by-day front line for the entire Barbarossa operation. I'm going to go nuts. But yeah, I'm gonna at least try to explain what every scenario is about, and who was there, and why they were there, and what was happening, and that kind of stuff. I'm gonna try to at least cover that. That should be possible, but don't expect a day-by-day, in detail discussion of Barbarossa, because people have written entire PhDs about that, so no way I can do that. Don't have the time to research it, and I certainly don't have the time to talk about it. So I will limit it to what we see in the game.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for participating in the chat. This time there was a lot going on.
Yeah. And yeah, I think we will continue this, discussing stuff that we did. Maybe I find something that...
yeah, we can turn it around next time.
Yeah, I think we can do back and forth at the same time next time, because I think this amount of scenarios that we're now going to play in Russia will give us ample amount of time.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we're going to have both trouble with the Russian tanks, even with the Russian Air Force, maybe. We discussed that earlier today. That we are already both a little bit worried about how many planes we're going to see in Minsk, because for the life of me I can't remember, and I'm assuming if the briefing talks that explicitly about them, they're going to be a lot. So yeah, we're probably going to discuss how we both approached that superiority in tanks and in the air, at least in numbers, and how we solved that situation. Also, how we used our units. I'm going to use a Flammpanzer. Brock is also going to use Gradschützen. So we both don't know 100% yet what we're going to do about Brest. So we'll see how we both solve those problems. Certainly, we're going to certainly find something to discuss in there.
Yeah, definitely. Because I expect the maps are getting huge, at least what I've seen from Minsk, and...
Yeah, I think Smolensk is also not exactly small. I think it's rough.
Going into those blind is always extremely daunting, because you absolutely don't know where to put stuff.
Yeah.
I'm always, yeah, I don't like them. I like playing them, but I don't like the moment before I play them because
Yeah, I'm also still in a situation I'm not sure whether to make a focus somewhere, and if so, where and with what, and
yeah, and the risk is always that it's complete stupid decision.
Yeah, if the focus is on the wrong place, then yeah. But it's what we talked about. We're gonna go for a plan, and then we're just gonna run with it and hope for the best, and just work in the situation and try to make it work. It's what everybody did in the war. That's how you do it in real life. So it might as well be what we do.
Yep.
It's also why I'm not going to restart even after losing units. Before that, I would probably have restarted after losing that artillery, but we're not going to do that. Will try my best to resolve the prestige situation that I'm in. I'm a little bit worried about it. I'm actually expecting after we finish 1941, Bruck will be at about double the prestige that I have. But we'll see.
I doubt that.
Well, you're getting close. You're at about 17,000 now, I think, and I'm at about 10,000. So
yeah, you're right. But I still have to do some purchase. I'm still 1 infantry short, I think. And you have already upgraded all your stuff. I think I've still a Panzer 4D floating around.
Yeah, I have at least my Panzers upgraded so much that they don't.
38Ts. Yeah, my core is a lot cheaper, I think.
Yeah, I don't need to do any more armor upgrades until 1942. Yeah, that's true. But at least not any out of family ones.
It's not a ton of prestige, but it's definitely at least 1,000.
Yeah, probably more, because I also upgraded one of my level bombers already. That's 500 prestige right there. The Flammenpanzer and the Nebelwerfer. The Wolframen also costs 500.
Yep, see, it's not that bad at least.
Yeah, we'll see.
I already thought if the situation arises that you're really running completely out of prestige, I think we could technically play it like we are playing the same game, and I can shift some prestige towards you.
Nah, I think we'll find other ways of doing that. I mean, maybe I have to reduce my core, just get rid of some units, at least temporarily, and just try to solve it like that.
Yeah, but I don't think it will happen, because I think you're too worried now. But if it should happen that you're really completely stuck, I don't think I can spend all I have. So it is an option.
Yeah, well, we'll see about that. I also don't think it will come to that. I just think,
it's just a security net, so you're not too worried about your prestige situation.
I'm still. I mean, right now I dropped below the line, but right now I invested like crazy. That'll resolve itself.
Like I said, I don't think it's critical.
I'm still with that small dip in mind that I took right now. It's not a huge dip. I'm like 100 prestige below the line or something like that. It's not a huge thing. I'm still on track with the line. But the thing that worries me is that you're so much ahead of the line, and I'm worried that is necessary for the future grand campaigns to build up such a, because now I see that is actually possible, and I'm not sure, because I kind of calculated that we will keep making prestige all the way up until the end of 1942. What if that is not the case? Then I might run into a little bit of problem. If I start losing prestige and I have only built up 10,000, maybe I should have built up 20,000 by that. I don't know how much I'm going to need. That's the problem.
I understand.
Because I never finished the grand campaign. I have no idea how much prestige we're going to need. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's the point why I'm playing extra greedy, because I have even less idea.
Yeah, I actually did now regular replacements on most of my units. I don't think that's going to be much of a problem. Yes, in Barbarossa, I'm saying, in Minsk, it might be a little bit of a problem. I think I'm going to be back for the most part, at the most after Smolensk. I think even after but Minsk already, considering how big that map is, I think all of my units will get plenty to do. But I'm going to take that risk, dropping some of my units back to 1 star. I'm also actually going to try what some people said, that it's probably better to stick with 2 stars instead of trying to go for 3, because 3 might be too expensive to maintain. I'm not sure. I'm actually going to try and do that, at least for the time being. Maybe I decide otherwise after 1941. But for the remainder of 1941, I'm going to stay at 2 stars.
Well, my plan is to, peak at 3 stars. Just like the original Wehrmacht had a peak in experience and then slowly drop below again.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I'm going to peak at 3. At least not in 1941. I might go for it in 1942. I'm not sure. In 1941, I'm not gonna do it yet.
Yeah, and obviously, I think starting with 43, I will not maintain experience levels on a broader front. So I will build up focus units.
Yeah, we'll see.
But for now, I really plan to go to 3 stars with all of my units, at least for 42. 41, 42, I want to be over 3 stars.
Yeah, I might.
I will try to drop.
Yeah, I might build them up to 3 stars.
The historical situation as well. So
yeah,
maybe I could afford it, but I don't want to do it.
I might build them up to 3 stars in 1942. Even if I decide to only do it then, I will still have the opportunity to do it. Depending on how many losses I take, some units might be able to do it anyway. I'm certainly not going to drop them on purpose.
Yeah, sure. Me neither.
But if I have the choice between dropping them to 2 stars and saving the prestige or keeping them, giving them the opportunity to go to 3, I'm going to keep them at 2. In 1942, I might decide otherwise, and these grand campaigns are long enough that I can still then gain a star in 1 grand campaign.
Yeah, sure.
So I might start 43 with 3 stars. I might start with 2 stars. I don't know yet, but I will probably start the next one with 2 stars. But we'll see. 1942, the Germans are still on the offensive, so it's still a chance to rise experience. After that, yeah, we probably agree that after that, the Germans didn't look so well anymore. At least not after Kursk. I mean, Kursk, yeah, but Kursk is also gonna be tough. Because Kursk, they were running into huge resistance, and so are we gonna do. So I'm not sure whether that's the time to gain much of anything. So we'll see.
Yeah, but I at least hope that after Kursk I will have some of my units at 3 stars.
Yeah.
Not Kursk, Minsk.
Yeah, Minsk. I will have to get them back to 2 stars, but I risk that because I was so much investing now. I wanted to compensate with that with something. And I think it will still work out. Initially, most of my units that dropped a lot was my infantry, for obvious reasons. Crete. And I don't actually think my infantry will run into that much hard opposition because the initial soft stuff that the Russians have are actually pretty crap. So I don't think my infantry is going to run into trouble. They have a huge initiative advantage over the Russians early on to begin with. So I don't think they need the experience. And my tanks didn't lose a whole lot. My tanks are still on track in terms of experience. It's only my infantry, and I think I can afford to lose some experience on the infantry for now.
Yeah, the point is the infantry gains experience super slow. That's really painful.
Yeah, I don't know. In Russia, fighting all those conscripts, I don't know. They will do a huge amount of damage in the early Russian scenarios. Later on, not so much anymore, but early on, taking out all those conscripts and all that light stuff.
Yeah, but the damage does not translate into experience.
Not directly, no, but the map is huge. The number of units that they will have to fight is huge. I think that will translate into experience. Yeah. We'll see.
That definitely, but I don't think you have to worry too much, because I think I'm overspending into experience at the moment. I do it more for, don't know, historical or gameplay reasons, but I don't think you need to have 2 stars.
Yeah. I'm also thinking about
maybe you need 2 stars, but you definitely don't need 3 stars, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 probably you need. I'm probably not gonna go for a permanent level of 1 star. I think that's a little too little. But yeah, I think we also
Soviets. I think you should. I still don't know what experience levels the units will be we are facing, but
I have no idea. I don't remember.
I like to be above them. That's all that matters usually.
Yeah, the early ones probably shouldn't have historically that much experience, I would say, because early on they still have the problem that they don't have as many good commanders. That will change, but early on, I don't know. What I would say, however, is why I also think that even going for a historical perspective, I think dropping down a little bit in experience is still historical for one reason. The Germans basically did, in preparation for Barbarossa, basically the same thing that they did in preparation for France. They doubled the number of panzer divisions. That obviously means splitting up the old ones and mixing experienced people with completely new guys. So that obviously dropped the experience level a little bit, because if you double your units and you have only so many experienced guys, that's gonna spread out the experience a little bit. They went from 10 panzer divisions to 20, so actually a couple more even. I think 22 or 23. Some of those went to Africa. So in Russia, I think there were about 20. So yeah, it's also going to be something. But I think after 1941, yeah, it might be a good idea to go for 3. We'll see. Well, in 1942, we also get a bunch of the better crap. We get better Panzer IVs. We get the first self-propelled anti-tank guns. We get a bunch of really good stuff in 1942. I think actually 1942 and maybe early 1943, in terms of equipment, was probably the golden age for the Wehrmacht. They had kind of the best stuff in middle of, I think, the middle of 1942 to the middle of 1943. They had the really, really, really good stuff. And they still had enough of it. So we'll see. But okay, let's call it a day. Otherwise, we're going to go for too late again. We both have to get up in the morning. So I hope you're looking forward to Barbarossa. First time facing the Russians for real. We had some facing with them in spoils of war. This time it's gonna be for real. No more war games. Yeah. They're gonna kick our butts eventually, but let's hope it doesn't happen before it happened historically. So we'll see. So thank you again, also from my side, for the very active chat. It's always more fun. And yeah, we're going to have more tactics, in-depth discussions in the future. I hope you're looking forward to that. So thank you again, Bruck, for your insights this time.
Yeah, I hope you can use some of it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially the pointers about the surrenders, because it's not like I haven't detected that as a weakness myself. I definitely have to do something about that. So I hope I will manage to. Otherwise, we need to discuss that again next time. I went at some point, once I'm getting hit over the head enough with it, I hope I will eventually learn. So, yeah, there's always something that you can get better at. I also already improved in a bunch of areas, but there's still enough left where I can improve. So I think I will have to do so for the final grand campaigns. Otherwise, we're going to run into a little bit of trouble with the Russians. So until then, keep your heads down, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.